The second Mrs. Tanqueray by Arthur W. Pinero. Imprint. This ebook is the product of many hours of hard work by volunteers for Standard eBooks, and builds on the hard work of other literature lovers made possible by the public domain. This particular ebook is based on a transcription from Project Gutenberg and on digital scans from the HathiTrust Digital Library. The source text and artwork in this ebook are believed to be in the United States public domain. That is, they are believed to be free of copyright restrictions in the United States. They may still be copyrighted in other countries, so users located outside of the United States must check their local laws before using this ebook. The creators of, and contributors to, this ebook dedicate their contributions to the worldwide public domain via the terms in the CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication. For full license information, see the uncopyright at the end of this ebook. Standard eBooks is a volunteer-driven project that produces ebook editions of public domain literature using modern typography, technology, and editorial standards, and distributes them free of cost. You can download this and other ebooks carefully produced for true book lovers at standardebooks.org. The persons of the play: Aubrey Tanqueray, Paula Elian, Kaylee Drummel, Mrs. Court Elian, Captain Hugh Ardale, Gordon Jane, M.D. Frank Misceth, Q.C., M.P. Sir George O'Reed, Bart. Lady O'Reed Morse. The present day. The scene of the first act is laid at Mr. Tanqueray's rooms, No. 2X, the Albany, in the month of November. The occurrences of the succeeding acts take place at his house, Higher Combe, near Willowmere, Surrey, during the early part of the following year. The second Mrs. Tanqueray act, I Aubrey Tanqueray's chambers in the Albany, a richly and tastefully decorated room, elegantly and luxuriously furnished. On the right a large pair of doors opening into another room, on the left at the further end of the room a small door leading to a bedchamber. A circular table is laid for a dinner for 4 persons which has now reached the stage of dessert and coffee. Everything in the apartment suggests wealth and refinement. The fire is burning brightly. Aubrey Tanqueray, Misceth, and Jane are seated at the dinner table. Aubrey is 42, handsome, winning in manner, his speech and bearing retaining some of the qualities of young manhood. Misceth is about 47, genial and portly. Jane is a year or two Misceth's senior, soft-speaking and precise in appearance, a type of the prosperous town physician. Morse, Aubrey's servant, places a little cabinet of cigars and the spirit lamp on the table beside Aubrey, and goes out. Misceth: Aubrey, it is a pleasant yet dreadful fact to contemplate, but it's nearly 15 years since I first dined with you. You lodged in Piccadilly in those days, over a hat shop. Jane: I met you at that dinner. And Kaylee Drummel: Jane: yes, yes. What a pity it is that Kaylee isn't here tonight. Aubrey: confound the old gossip. His empty chair has been staring us in the face all through dinner. I ought to have told Morse to take it away. Misceth: odd, his sending no excuse. Aubrey: I'll walk round to his lodgings later on and ask after him. Misceth: I'll go with you. Jane: so will I. Aubrey opening the cigar cabinet. Doctor, it's useless to tempt you, I know. Frank Misceth and Aubrey smoke. I particularly wished Kaylee Drummel to be one of us tonight. You two fellows and Kaylee are my closest, my best friends. Misceth: my dear Aubrey. Jane: I rejoice to hear you say so. Aubrey: and I wanted to see the 3 of you round this table. You can guess the reason. Misceth: you desired to give us a most excellent dinner. Jane: obviously. Aubrey hesitatingly. Well, I glancing at the clock, Kaylee: 1 turn up now. Jane: hardly. Aubrey: then you two shall hear it. Doctor, Frank, this is the last time we are to meet in these rooms. Jane: the last time? Misceth: you going to leave the Albany? Aubrey: yes. You've heard me speak of a house I built in the country years ago, haven't you? Misceth in Surrey. Aubrey, well, when my wife died I cleared out of that house and let it. I think of trying the place again. Misceth, but you'll go raving mad if ever you find yourself down there alone. Aubrey, ah, but I shan't be alone, and that's what I wanted to tell you. I am going to be married. Jane going to be married? Misceth married? Aubrey, yes, tomorrow. Jane, tomorrow? Misceth, you take my breath away. My dear fellow, I of course, I congratulate you. Jane, and so do I heartily. Aubrey, thanks. There is a moment or two of embarrassment. Misceth, this is an excellent cigar. Jane, your coffee is remarkable. Aubrey, look here, I dare say you two old friends think this treatment very strange, very unkind. So I want you to understand me. You know a marriage often cools friendships. What's the usual course of things? A man's engagement is given out, he is congratulated, complimented upon his choice, the church is filled with troops of friends, and he goes away happily to a chorus of good wishes. He comes back, sets up house in town or country, and thinks to resume the old associations, the old companionships. My dear Frank, my dear good doctor, it's very seldom that it can be done. Generally, a worm has begun to eat its way into those hearty, unreserved, prenuptial friendships, a damnable constraint sets in and acts like a wasting disease, and so, believe me, in 9 cases out of 10 a man's marriage severs for him more close ties than it forms. Misceth, well, my dear Aubrey, I earnestly hope, Aubrey, I know what you're going to say, Frank. I hope so, too. In the meantime let us face dangers. I've reminded you of the usual course of things, but my marriage isn't even the conventional sort of marriage likely to satisfy society. Now, Kaylee's a bachelor, but you 2 men have wives. By the by, my love to Mrs. Misceth and to Mrs. Jane when you get home, don't forget that. Well, your wives may not like the lady I am going to marry. Jane, Aubrey, forgive me for suggesting that the lady you are going to marry may not like our wives, mine at least, I beg your pardon, Frank. Aubrey, quite so, then I must go the way my wife goes. Misceth, come, pray don't let us anticipate that either side will be called upon to make such a sacrifice. Aubrey, yes, let us anticipate it. And let us make up our minds to have no slow bleeding to death of our friendship. We'll end a pleasant chapter here tonight, and after tonight start afresh. When my wife and I settle down at Willowmere, it's possible that we shall all come together. But if this isn't to be, for heaven's sake let us recognize that it is simply because it can be, and not wear hypocritical faces and suffer and be wretched. Doctor, Frank holding out his hands, one to Misceth, the other to Jane. Good luck to all of us. Misceth, but do I understand we are to ask nothing? Not even the lady's name, Aubrey? Aubrey, the lady, my dear Frank, belongs to the next chapter, and in that her name is Mrs. Aubrey Tanqueray. Jane raising his coffee cup. Then, in an old-fashioned way, I propose a toast. Aubrey, Frank, I give you the next chapter. They drink the toast, saying, the next chapter. Aubrey, doctor, find a comfortable chair, Frank, you too. As we're going to turn out by and by, let me scribble a couple of notes now while I think of them. Misceth and Jane, certainly yes. Aubrey, it might slip my memory when I get back. Aubrey sits at a writing table at the other end of the room, and writes. Jane to Misceth, in a whisper. Frank. Misceth quietly leaves his chair and sits nearer to Jane. What is all this? Simply a morbid crank of Aubrey S. with regard to anti-nuptial acquaintances? Misceth H.M. Did you notice one expression he used? Jane, let me think. Misceth, my marriage is not even the conventional sort of marriage likely to satisfy society. Jane, bless me, yes. What does that suggest? Misceth, that he has a particular rather than a general reason for anticipating estrangement from his friends, I am afraid. Jane, a horrible mésalliance. A dairymaid who has given him a glass of milk during a day's hunting, or a little anemic shop girl. Frank, I am utterly wretched. Misceth, my dear Jane, speaking in absolute confidence, I have never been more profoundly depressed in my life. Morse enters. Morse announcing. Mr. Drummle. Cayley Drummle enters briskly. He is a neat little man of about 45, in manner bright, airy, debonair, but with an undercurrent of seriousness. Morse retires. Drummle, I am in disgrace, nobody realizes that more thoroughly than I do. Where's my host? Aubrey, who has risen. Cayley. Drummle, shaking hands with him. Don't speak to me till I have tendered my explanation. A harsh word from anybody would unman me. Misceth and Jane shake hands with Drummle. Aubrey, have you dined? Drummle, no, unless you call a bit of fish, a cutlet, and a pancake dining. Aubrey, Cayley, this is disgraceful. Jane, fish, a cutlet, and a pancake will require a great deal of explanation. Misceth, especially the pancake. My dear friend, your case looks miserably weak. Drummle, hear me. Hear me. Jane, now then. Misceth, come. Aubrey, well. Drummle, it so happens that tonight I was exceptionally early in dressing for dinner. Misceth, for which dinner? The fish and cutlet? Drummle, for this dinner, of course, really, Frank. At 7:15, in fact, I found myself trimming my nails, with 10 minutes to spare. Just then enter my man with a note. Would I hasten, as fast as cab could carry me, to old Lady O'Reed in Bruton Street? Sad trouble. Now, recollect, please, I had 10 minutes on my hands. Old Lady O'Reed was a very dear friend of my mother's, and was in some distress. Aubrey, Cayley, come to the fish and cutlet? Misceth and Jane, yes, yes, and the pancake. Drummle, upon my word. Well, the scene in Bruton Street beggars description. The women servants looked scared, the men drunk, and there was poor old Lady O'Reed on the floor of her boudoir like Queen Bess among her pillows. Aubrey, what's the matter? Drummle, to everybody. You know George O'Reed? Misceth, yes. Jane, I've met him. Drummle, well, he's a thing of the past. Aubrey, not dead. Drummle, certainly, in the worst sense. He's married Mabel Hervey. Misceth, what? Drummle, it's true this morning. The poor mother showed me his letter, a dozen curt words, and some of those ill-spelt. Misceth, walking up to the fireplace. I am very sorry. Jane, pardon my ignorance. Who was Mabel Hervey? Drummle, you don't? Oh, of course not. Miss Hervey, Lady O'Reed, as she now is, was a lady who would have been, perhaps has been, described in the reports of the police or the divorce court as an actress. Had she belonged to a lower stratum of our advanced civilization, she would, in the event of judicial inquiry, have defined her calling with equal justification as that of a dressmaker. To do her justice, she is a type of a class which is immortal. Physically, by the strange caprice of creation, curiously beautiful; mentally, she lacks even the strength of deliberate viciousness. Paint her portrait, it would symbolize a creature perfectly patrician; lance a vein of her superbly modeled arm, you would get the poorest veine ordinaire. Her affections, emotions, impulses, her very existence a burlesque. Flaxen, 25, and feebly frolicsome, anybody's, in less gentle society I should say everybody's, property. That, doctor, was Miss Hervey, who is the new Lady O'Reid. Dost thou like the picture? Misceth very good, Cayley. Bravo. Aubrey laying his hand on Drummel's shoulder. You'd scarcely believe it, Jane, but none of us really know anything about this lady, our gay young friend here, I suspect, least of all. Drummel Aubrey, I applaud your chivalry. Aubrey, and perhaps you'll let me finish a couple of letters which Frank and Jane have given me leave to write. Returning to the writing table. Ring for what you want, like a good fellow. Aubrey resumes his writing. Misceth to Drummel. Still, the fish and cutlet remain unexplained. Drummel, oh, the poor old woman was so weak that I insisted upon her taking some food, and felt there was nothing for it but to sit down opposite her. The fool! The blackguard! Misceth poor O'Reid. Well, he's gone under for a time. Drummel for a time. My dear Frank, I tell you he has absolutely ceased to be. Aubrey, who has been writing busily, turns his head towards the speakers and listens. His lips are set, and there is a frown upon his face. For all practical purposes you may regard him as the late George O'Reid. Tomorrow the very characteristics of his speech, as we remember them, will have become obsolete. Jane, but surely, in the course of years, he and his wife will outlive Drummel. No, no, doctor, don't try to upset one of my settled beliefs. You may dive into many waters, but there is one social Dead Sea. Jane, perhaps you rewrite. Drummel, right. Good God! I wish you could prove me otherwise. Why, for years I've been sitting, and watching and waiting. Misceth you re-inform tonight, Cayley. May we ask where you've been in the habit of squandering your useful leisure? Drummel, where? On the shore of that same sea. Misceth, and, pray, what have you been waiting for? Drummel, for some of my best friends to come up. Aubrey utters a half-stifled exclamation of impatience, then he hurriedly gathers up his papers from the writing table. The three men turn to him. Aubrey, oh, I'll finish my letters in the other room if you'll excuse me for 5 minutes. Tell Cayley the news. He goes out. Drummel hurrying to the door. My dear fellow, my jabbering has disturbed you. I'll never talk again as long as I live. Misceth, close the door, Cayley. Drummel shuts the door. Jane, Cayley. Drummel advancing to the dinner table. A smoke, or I perish. Selects a cigar from the little cabinet. Jane, Cayley, marriages are in the air. Drummel, are they? Discover the bacillus, doctor, and destroy it. Jane, I mean, among our friends. Drummel, oh, Nugent Warinder's engagement to Lady Alice Tring. I've heard of that. They not to be married till the spring. Jane, another marriage that concerns us a little takes place tomorrow. Drummel, whose marriage? Jane, Aubrey's. Drummel, Ob. Looking towards Misceth. Is it a joke? Misceth, no. Drummel looking from Misceth to Jane. To whom? Misceth, he doesn't tell us. Jane, we three were asked here tonight to receive the announcement. Aubrey has some theory that marriage is likely to alienate a man from his friends, and it seems to me he has taken the precaution to wish us goodbye. Misceth, no, no. Jane, practically, surely. Drummel thoughtfully. Marriage in general, does he mean, or this marriage? Jane, that's the point. Frank says Misceth, no, 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 I feared it, suggested Jane. Well. To Drummel. What do you think of it? Drummel after a slight pause. Is there a light there? lighting his cigar. He wraps the lady in mystery, you say? Misceth most modestly. Druml Aubrey s not a very young man. Jane 43. Druml LH critique. Misceth a dangerous age, yes, yes. Druml, when you two fellows go home, do you mind leaving me behind here? Misceth not at all. Jane, by all means. Druml, all right. Anxiously. Deuce take it, the man's second marriage must be another mistake. With his head bent he walks up to the fireplace. Jane, you knew him in his short married life, Cayley. Terribly unsatisfactory, wasn't he it? Druml, well, looking at the door. I quite closed that door? Misceth, yes. Settles himself on the sofa. Jane is seated in an armchair. Druml smoking, with his back to the fire. He married a Miss Harriet, that was in the year 18 confound dates 20 years ago. She was a lovely creature, by Jove, she was, by religion a Roman Catholic. She was one of your cold sort, you know, all marble arms and black velvet. I remember her with painful distinctness as the only woman who ever made me nervous. Misceth, ha, ha. Druml, he loved her to distraction, as they say. Jupiter, how fervently that poor devil courted her. But I don't believe she allowed him even to squeeze her fingers. She was an iceberg. As for kissing, the mere contact would have given him chapped lips. However, he married her and took her away, the latter greatly to my relief. Jane, abroad, you mean? Druml, yes. I imagine he gratified her by renting a villa in Lapland, but I don't know. After a while they returned, and then I saw how woefully Aubrey had miscalculated results. Jane, miscalculated? Druml, he had reckoned, poor wretch, that in the early days of marriage she would thaw. But she didn't. I used to picture him closing his doors and making up the fire in the hope of seeing her features relax. Bless her, the thaw never set in. I believe she kept a thermometer in her stays and always registered 10 degrees below zero. However, in time a child came, a daughter. Jane, didn't that? Druml, not a bit of it, it made matters worse. Frightened at her failure to stir up in him some sympathetic religious belief, she determined upon strong measures with regard to the child. He opposed her for a miserable year or so, but she wore him down, and the insensible little brat was placed in a convent, first in France, then in Ireland. Not long afterwards the mother died, strangely enough, of fever, the only warmth, I believe, that ever came to that woman's body. Misceth don't, Cayley. Jane, the child is living, we know. Druml, yes, if you choose to call it living. Miss Tanqueray, a young woman of 19 now, is in the Loreto convent at Armagh. She professes to have found her true vocation in a religious life, and within a month or two will take final vows. Misceth, he ought to have removed his daughter from the convent when the mother died. Druml, yes, yes, but absolutely at the end there was reconciliation between husband and wife, and she won his promise that the child should complete her conventual education. He reaped his reward. When he attempted to gain his girl's confidence and affection he was too late, he found he was dealing with the spirit of the mother. You remember his visit to Ireland last month? Jane, yes. Druml, that was to wish his girl goodbye. Misceth, poor fellow? Druml, he sent for me when he came back. I think he must have had a lingering hope that the girl would relent, would come to life, as it were at the last moment, for an hour or so, in this room, he was terribly shaken. I am sure he clung to that hope from the persistent way in which he kept breaking off in his talk to repeat one dismal word, as if he couldn't realize his position without dinning this damned word into his head. Jane, what word was that? Druml, alone. Aubrey enters. Aubrey, 1,000 apologies. Drumroll gaily. We are talking about you, my dear Aubrey. During the telling of the story, Misceth has risen and gone to the fire, and Drumroll has thrown himself full length on the sofa. Aubrey now joins Misceth and Jane. Aubrey, well, Kaylee, are you surprised? Drumroll Serp. I haven't been surprised for 20 years. Aubrey, and you re not angry with me? Drumroll angry. Rising. Because you considerately withhold the name of a lady with whom it is now the object of my life to become acquainted? My dear fellow, you pique my curiosity, you give zest to my existence. And as for a wedding, who on earth wants to attend that familiar and probably drafty function? Ugh! My cigar's out. Aubrey, let us talk about something else. Misceth looking at his watch. Not tonight, Aubrey. Aubrey, my dear Frank. Misceth, I go up to Scotland tomorrow, and there are some little matters, Jane, I am off to. Aubrey, no, no. Jane, I have to give a look to a case in Clifford Street on my way home. Aubrey going to the door. Well. Misceth and Jane exchange looks with Drumroll. Opening the door and calling. Morse, hats, and coats. I shall write to you all next week from Genoa or Florence. Now, Dr. Frank, remember, my love to Mrs. Misceth and to Mrs. Jane. Morse enters with hats and coats. Misceth and Jane, yes, 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 yes. Aubrey and your young people. As Misceth and Jane put on their coats, there is the clatter of careless talk. Jane, Kaylee, I meet you at dinner on Sunday. Drumroll at the Stratfields. That's very pleasant. Misceth putting on his coat with Aubrey's aid. Aubrey, what's wrong? Misceth a twinge. Why didn't I go to Ike's in August? Jane shaking hands with Drumroll. Good night, Kaylee. Drumroll, good night, my dear doctor. Misceth shaking hands with Drumroll. Kaylee, are you in town for long? Drumroll, dear friend, I am nowhere for long. Good night. Misceth, good night. Aubrey, Jane, and Misceth go out, followed by Morse. The hum of talk is continued outside. Aubrey, a cigar, Frank? Misceth, no, thank you. Aubrey, going to walk, doctor? Jane, if Frank will. Misceth, by all means. Aubrey, it's a cold night. The door is closed. Drumroll remains standing with his coat on his arm and his hat in his hand. Drumroll to himself, thoughtfully. Now then. What the devil? Aubrey returns. Aubrey eyeing Drumroll a little awkwardly. Well, Kaylee? Drumroll, well, Aubrey? Aubrey walks up to the fire and stands looking into it. Aubrey, you re not going, old chap? Drumroll sitting. No. Aubrey after a slight pause, with a forced laugh. Ha! Kaylee, I never thought I should feel shy with you. Drumroll, why do you? Aubrey, never mind. Drumroll, now, I can quite understand a man wishing to be married in the dark, as it were. Aubrey, you can? Drumroll, in your place I should very likely adopt the same course. Aubrey, you think so? Drumroll, and if I intended marrying a lady not prominently in society, as I presume you do, Aubrey, well? Drumroll, as I presume you do, I am not sure that I should tender her for preliminary dissection at afternoon tea tables. Aubrey, no? Drumroll, in fact, there is probably only one person were I in your position tonight with whom I should care to chat the matter over. Aubrey, who's that? Drumroll, yourself, of course. Going to Aubrey and standing beside him. Of course, yourself, old friend. Aubrey after a pause. I must seem a brute to you, Kaylee. But there are some acts which are hard to explain, hard to defend. Drummle to defend? Aubrey, some acts which one must trust to time to put right. Drummle watches him for a moment, then takes up his hat and coat. Drummle, well, I'll be moving. Aubrey, Cayley. Confound you and your old friendship. Do you think I forget it? Put your coat down. Why did you stay behind here? Cayley, the lady I am going to marry is the lady who is known as Mrs. Jarman. There is a pause. Drummle in a low voice. Mrs. Jarman. Are you serious? He walks up to the fireplace, where he leans upon the mantelpiece uttering something like a groan. Aubrey, as you've got this out of me, I give you leave to say all you care to say. Come, we'll be plain with each other. You know Mrs. Jarman? Drummle, I first met her at What Does It Matter? Aubrey, yes, everything. Come. Drummle, I met her at Hamburg, 2-3 seasons ago. Aubrey, not as Mrs. Jarman? Drummle, no. Aubrey, she was then? Drummle, Mrs. Dartrey. Aubrey, yes. She has also seen you in London, she says. Drummle, certainly. Aubrey, in Aldford Street. Go on. Drummle, please. Aubrey, I insist. Drummle with a slight shrug of the shoulders. Sometime last year I was asked by a man to sup at his house, one night after the theatre. Aubrey, Mr. Selwyn Ethurst, a bachelor. Drummle, yes. Aubrey, you were surprised therefore to find Mr. Ethurst aided in his cursed hospitality by a lady. Drummle, I was unprepared. Aubrey, the lady you had known as Mrs. Dartrey? Drummle inclines his head silently. There is something of a yachting cruise in the Mediterranean too, is there not? Drummle, I joined Peter Jarman's yacht at Marseilles, in the spring, a month before he died. Aubrey, Mrs. Jarman was on board? Drummle, she was a kind hostess. Aubrey, and an old acquaintance? Drummle, yes. Aubrey, you have told your story. Drummle, with your assistance. Aubrey, I have put you to the pain of telling it to show you that this is not the case of a blind man entrapped by an artful woman. Let me add that Mrs. Jarman has no legal right to that name, that she is simply Miss Ray, Miss Paula Ray. Drummle, after a pause. I should like to express my regret, Aubrey, for the way in which I spoke of George O'Reed's marriage. Aubrey, you mean you compare Lady O'Reed with Miss Ray? Drummle is silent. Oh, of course. To you, Cayley, all women who have been roughly treated, and who dare to survive by borrowing a little of our philosophy, are alike. You see in the crowd of the ill-used only one pattern, you can detect the shades of goodness, intelligence, even nobility there. Well, how should you? The crowd is dimly lighted. And, besides, yours is the way of the world. Drummle, my dear Aubrey, I live in the world. Aubrey, the name we give our little parish of St. James's. Drummle, laying a hand on Aubrey's shoulder. And you are quite prepared, my friend, to forfeit the esteem of your little parish? Aubrey, I avoid mortification by shifting from one parish to another. I give up Pall Mall for the Surrey Hills, leave off varnishing my boots and double the thickness of the solace. Drummle, and your skin, do you double the thickness of that also? Aubrey, I know you think me a fool. Cayley, you needn't infer that I am a coward into the bargain. No. I know what I am doing, and I do it deliberately, defiantly. I am alone, I injure no living soul by the step I am going to take, and so you can urge the one argument which might restrain me. Of course, I don't expect you to think compassionately, fairly even, of the woman whom I am drawn to. Drummle, my dear Aubrey, I assure you I consider Miss Jarman, Miss Ray delightful. But I confess there is a form of chivalry which I gravely distrust, especially in a man of our age. Aubrey, thanks. I've heard you say that from 40 till 50 a man is at heart either a stoic or a satyr. Drummle protestingly. Ah. Now Aubrey, I am neither. I have a temperate, honorable affection for Mrs. Jarman. She has never met a man who has treated her well. I intend to treat her well. That's all. And in a few years, Kaylee, if you've not quite forsaken me, I'll prove to you that it's possible to rear a life of happiness, of good repute, on a miserable foundation. Drummle offering his hand. Do prove it. Aubrey taking his hand. We have spoken too freely of Mrs. Jarman. I was excited, angry. Please forget it. Drummle, my dear Aubrey, when we next meet I shall remember nothing but my respect for the lady who bears your name. Morse enters, closing the door behind him carefully. Aubrey, what is it? Morse hesitatingly. May I speak to you, sir? In an undertone. Mrs. Jarman, sir. Aubrey softly to Morse. Mrs. Jarman. Do you mean she is at the lodge in her carriage? Morse, no, sir, here. Aubrey looks towards Drummle, perplexed. There's a nice fire in that room, sir. Glancing in the direction of the door leading to the bedroom. Aubrey between his teeth, angrily. Very well. Morse retires. Drummle looking at his watch. 11:15 horrible. Taking up his hat and coat. Must get to bed up late every night this week. Aubrey assists Drummle with his coat. Thank you. Well, good night, Aubrey. I feel I've been just serious, quite out of keeping with myself, pray overlook it. Aubrey kindly. Ah, Kaylee. Drummle putting on a neck handkerchief. And remember that, after all, I am merely a spectator in life, nothing more than a man at a play, in fact, only, like the old-fashioned playgoer, I love to see certain characters happy and comfortable at the finish. You understand? Aubrey, I think I do. Drummle, then, for as long as you can, old friend, will you keep a stall for me? Aubrey, yes, Kaylee. Drummle gaily. Ah, ha. Good night. Bustling to the door. Don't bother. I'll let myself out. Good night. God bless yer. He goes out, Aubrey follows him. Morse enters by the other door, carrying some unopened letters which after a little consideration he places on the mantelpiece against the clock. Aubrey returns. Aubrey, yes? Morse, you hadn't seen your letters that came by the 9 o'clock post, sir. I've put 'em where they'll catch your eye by and by. Aubrey, thank you. Morse hesitatingly. Gunter's cook and waiter have gone, sir. Would you prefer me to go to bed? Aubrey frowning. Certainly not. Morse, very well, sir. He goes out. Aubrey opening the upper door. Paula. Paula. Paula enters and throws her arms round his neck. She is a young woman of about 27, beautiful, fresh, innocent looking. She is in superb evening dress. Paula, dearest. Aubrey, why have you come here? Paula angry. Aubrey, yes, no, but it's 11 o'clock. Paula laughing. I know. Aubrey, what on earth will Morse think? Paula, do you trouble yourself about what servants think? Aubrey, of course. Paula, goose. They're only machines made to wait upon people and to give evidence in the divorce court. Looking round. Oh, indeed. A snug little dinner. Aubrey, 3 men. Paula suspiciously. Men? Aubrey, men. Paula penitently. Ah. Sitting at the table. I am so hungry. Aubrey, let me get you some game pie, or some Paula. No, hungry for this. What beautiful fruit. I love fruit when it's expensive. He clears a space on the table, places a plate before her, and helps her to fruit. I haven't dined, Aubrey dear. Aubrey, my poor girl. Why? Paula, in the first place, I forgot to order any dinner, and my cook, who has always loathed me, thought he'd pay me out before he departed. Aubrey the beast. Paula, that's precisely what I Aubrey know, Paula. Paula, what I told my maid to call him. What next will you think of me? Aubrey, forgive me. You must be starved. Paula, eating fruit. I didn't care. As there was nothing to eat, I sat in my best frock, with my toes on the dining room fender, and dreamt, oh, such a lovely dinner party. Aubrey dear, lonely little woman. Paula, it was perfect. I saw you at the end of a very long table, opposite me, and we exchanged sly glances now and again over the flowers. We were host and hostess, Aubrey, and had been married about 5 years. Aubrey kissing her hand. 5 years. Paula, and on each side of us was the nicest set imaginable, you know, dearest, the sort of men and women that can be imitated. Aubrey, yes. Eat some more fruit. Paula, but I haven't told you the best part of my dream. Aubrey, tell me. Paula, well, although we had been married only such a few years, I seemed to know by the look on their faces that none of our guests had ever heard anything peculiar about the fascinating hostess. Aubrey, that's just how it will be, Paula. The world moves so quickly. That's just how it will be. Paula, with a little grimace. I wonder. Glancing at the fire. Ugh. Do throw another log on. Aubrey, mending the fire. There. But you mustn't be here long. Paula, hospitable wretch. I've something important to tell you. No, stay where you are. Turning from him, her face averted. Look here, that was my dream, Aubrey, but the fire went out while I was dozing, and I woke up with a regular fit of the shivers. And the result of it all was that I ran upstairs and scribbled you a letter. Aubrey dear baby. Paula, remain where you are. Taking a letter from her pocket. This is it. I've given you an account of myself, furnished you with a list of my adventures since weighing the letter in her hand. I wonder if it would go for a penny. Most of it you reacquainted with, I've told you a good deal, haven't I? Aubrey, oh, Paula. Paula, what I haven't told you I dare say you've heard from others. But in case they've omitted anything, the dears, it's all here. Aubrey, in heaven's name, why must you talk like this tonight? Paula, it may save discussion by and by, don't you think? Holding out the letter. There you are. Aubrey, no, dear, no. Paula, take it. He takes the letter. Read it through after I've gone, and then read it again, and turn the matter over in your mind finally. And if, even at the very last moment, you feel you oughtn't to go to church with me, send a messenger to Pont Street, any time before 11 tomorrow, telling me that you're afraid, and I'll take the blow. Aubrey, why, what do you think I am? Paula, that's it. It's because I know you're such a dear good fellow that I want to save you the chance of ever feeling sorry you married me. I really love you so much, Aubrey, that to save you that I'd rather you treated me as the others have done. Aubrey, turning from her with a cry. Oh. Paula, after a slight pause. I suppose I've shocked you. I can't help it if I have. She sits, with assumed languor and indifference. He turns to her, advances, and kneels by her. Aubrey my dearest, you don't understand me. I can't bear to hear you always talking about what's done with. I tell you I'll never remember it, Paula, can't you dismiss it? Try. Darling, if we promise each other to forget, we rebound to be happy. After all, it's a mechanical matter, the moment a wretched thought enters your head, you quickly think of something bright, it depends on one's will. Shall I burn this, dear? Referring to the letter he holds in his hand. Let me. Paula with a shrug of the shoulders. I don't suppose there's much that's new to you in it, just as you like. He goes to the fire and burns the letter. Aubrey, there's an end of it. Returning to her. What's the matter? Paula rising, coldly. Oh, nothing. I'll go and put my cloak on. Aubrey detaining her. What is the matter? Paula, well, I think you might have said, you re very generous, Paula, or at least, thank you, dear, when I offered to set you free. Aubrey catching her in his arms. Ah. Paula, ah. Ha. It's all very well, but you don't know what it cost me to make such an offer. I do so want to be married. Aubrey, but you never imagined? Paula, perhaps not. And yet I did think of what I'd do at the end of our acquaintance if you had preferred to behave like the rest. Taking a flower from her bodice. Aubrey, hush. Paula, oh, I forgot. Aubrey, what would you have done when we parted? Paula, why, killed myself. Aubrey, Paula, dear. Paula, it's true. Putting the flower in his buttonhole. Do you know I feel certain I should make away with myself if anything serious happened to me. Aubrey, anything serious? What, has nothing ever been serious to you, Paula? Paula, not lately, not since a long while ago. I made up my mind then to have done with taking things seriously. If I hadn't however, we won't talk about that. Aubrey, but now, life will be different to you, won't it quite different? Dear? Paula, oh yes, now. Only, Aubrey, mind you keep me always happy. Aubrey, I will try to. Paula, I know I couldn't swallow a second big dose of misery. I know that if ever I felt wretched again, truly wretched, I should take a leaf out of Connie Tierlamont's book. You remember? They found her with a look of horror. Aubrey, for God's sake, don't let your thoughts run on such things. Paula laughing. Ha, how scared you look. There, think of the time. Dearest, what will my coachman say? My cloak. She runs off, gaily, by the upper door. Aubrey looks after her for a moment, then he walks up to the fire and stands warming his feet at the bars. As he does so, he raises his head and observes the letters upon the mantelpiece. He takes one down quickly. Aubrey, Elian. Opening the letter and reading. My dear father, a great change has come over me. I believe my mother in heaven has spoken to me, and counseled me to turn to you in your loneliness. At any rate, your words have reached my heart, and I no longer feel fitted for this solemn life. I am ready to take my place by you. Dear father, will you receive me? Elian. Paula re-enters, dressed in a handsome cloak. He stares at her as if he hardly realized her presence. Paula, what are you staring at? Don't you admire my cloak? Aubrey, yes. Paula, couldn't you wait till I'd gone before reading your letters? Aubrey, putting the letter away. I beg your pardon. Paula, take me downstairs to the carriage. Slipping her arm through his. How I tease you. Tomorrow. I am so happy. They go out. Act 2. A morning room in Aubrey Tanqueray's house, Higher Combe, near Willowmere, Surrey. A bright and prettily furnished apartment of irregular shape, with double doors opening into a small hall at the back, another door on the left, and a large recessed window through which is obtained a view of extensive grounds. Everything about the room is charming and graceful. The fire is burning in the grate, and a small table is tastefully laid for breakfast. It is a morning in early spring, and the sun is streaming in through the window. Aubrey and Paula are seated at breakfast, and Aubrey is silently reading his letters. Two servants, a man and a woman, hand dishes and then retire. After a little while Aubrey puts his letters aside and looks across to the window. Aubrey: sunshine. Spring. Paula glancing at the clock. Exactly 6 minutes. Aubrey: 6 minutes? Paula: 6 minutes, Aubrey dear, since you made your last remark. Aubrey: I beg your pardon, I was reading my letters. Have you seen Elian this morning? Paula coldly. Your last observation but one was about Elian. Aubrey: dearest, what shall I talk about? Paula: Elian breakfasted 2 hours ago, Morgan tells me, and then went out walking with her dog. Aubrey: she wraps up warmly, I hope, this sunshine is deceptive. Paula: I ran about the lawn last night, after dinner, in satin shoes. Were you anxious about me? Aubrey: certainly. Paula melting. Really? Aubrey: you make me wretchedly anxious, you delight in doing incautious things. You are incurable. Paula: ah, what a beast I am. Going to him and kissing him, then glancing at the letters by his side. A letter from Cayley? Aubrey: he is staying very near here, with Mrs. Very near here. Paula: with the lady whose chimneys we have the honor of contemplating from our windows? Aubrey: with Mrs. Court Elian. Yes. Paula: Mrs. Court Elian. The woman who might have set the example of calling on me when we first threw out roots in this deadly lively soil. Deuce take Mrs. Court Elian. Aubrey: hush. My dear girl. Paula returning to her seat. Oh, I know she's an old acquaintance of yours and of the first Mrs. Tanqueray. And she joins the rest of M in slapping the second Mrs. Tanqueray in the face. However, I have my revenge. She's 46, and I wish nothing worse to happen to any woman. Aubrey: well, she's going to town, Cayley says here, and his visit's at an end. He's coming over this morning to call on you. Shall we ask him to transfer himself to us? Do say yes. Paula: yes. Aubrey gladly. Ah, ha. Old Cayley. Paula coldly. He'll amuse you. Aubrey: and you too. Paula: because you find a companion, shall I be boisterously hilarious? Aubrey: come, come. He talks London, and you know you like that. Paula: London. London or heaven? Which is farther from me? Aubrey: Paula. Paula: oh. Oh, I am so bored, Aubrey. Aubrey gathering up his letters and going to her, leaning over her shoulder. Baby, what can I do for you? Paula: I suppose, nothing. You have done all you can for me. Aubrey: what do you mean? Paula: you have married me. He walks away from her thoughtfully, to the writing table. As he places his letters on the table he sees an addressed letter, stamped for the post, lying on the blotting book. He picks it up. Aubrey in an altered tone. You've been writing this morning before breakfast? Paula looking at him quickly, then away again. That letter. Aubrey with the letter in his hand. To Lady O'Reid. Why? Paula: why not? Mabel's an old friend of mine. Aubrey: are you corresponding? Paula: I heard from her yesterday. They've just returned from the Riviera. She seems happy. Aubrey sarcastically. That's good news. Paula, why are you always so cutting about Mabel? She's a kind-hearted girl. Everything's altered, she even thinks of letting her hair go back to brown. She's Lady O'Reilly. She's married to George. What's the matter with her? Aubrey turning away. Oh. Paula, you drive me mad sometimes with the tone you take about things. Great goodness, if you come to that, George O'Reilly's wife isn't a bit worse than yours. He faces her suddenly. I suppose I needn't have made that observation. Aubrey, no, there was scarcely a necessity. He throws the letter onto the table, and takes up the newspaper. Paula, I am very sorry. Aubrey, all right, dear. Paula trifling with the letter. I'd better tell you what I've written. I meant to do so, of course. I've asked the O'Reillys to come and stay with us. He looks at her and lets the paper fall to the ground in a helpless way. George was a great friend of Kaylee's. I am sure he would be delighted to meet them here. Aubrey laughing mirthlessly. Ha, ha, ha. They say O'Reilly has taken to tippling at dinner. Heavens above. Paula, oh. I've no patience with you. You'll kill me with this life. She selects some flowers from a vase on the table, cuts and arranges them, and fastens them in her bodice. What is my existence, Sunday to Saturday? In the morning, a drive down to the village, with the groom, to give my orders to the tradespeople. At lunch, you and Elian. In the afternoon, a novel, the newspapers, if fine, another drive if fine. You and Elian. Then 2 hours of dusk, then dinner you and Elian. Then a game of be-seek, you and I, while Elian reads a religious book in a dull corner. Then a yawn from me, another from you, a sigh from Elian, 3 figures suddenly rise good night, good night, good night. Imitating a kiss. God bless you. Ah. Aubrey, yes, yes. Paula, yes, dearest, that's what it is now. But, by and by, if people begin to come round us, Paula, ha. That's where we've made the mistake, my friend Aubrey. Pointing to the window. Do you believe these people will ever come round us? Your former crony, Mrs. Court Elian? Or the grim old vicar, or that wife of his whose huge nose is positively indecent? Or the Ullathorns, or the Gollans, or Lady William Peters. I know better. And when the young ones gradually take the place of the old, there will still remain the sacred tradition that the dreadful person who lives at the top of the hill is never, under any circumstances, to be called upon. And so we shall go on here, year in and year out, until the sap is run out of our lives, and we re-stale and dry and withered from sheer, solitary respectability. Upon my word, I wonder we didn't see that we should have been far happier if we'd gone in for the devil-may-care, CAF living sort of life in town. After all, I have a set and you might have joined it. It's true I did want, dearly, dearly, to be a married woman, but where's the pride in being a married woman among married women who are married? If seeing that Aubrey's head has sunk into his hands. Aubrey. My dear boy. You not crying? He looks up, with a flushed face. Elian enters, dressed very simply for walking. She is a low-voiced, grave girl of about 19, with a face somewhat resembling a Madonna. Towards Paula her manner is cold and distant. Aubrey in an undertone. Elian. Elian, good morning, Papa. Good morning, Paula. Paula puts her arms round Elian and kisses her. Elian makes little response. Paula, good morning. Brightly. We've been breakfasting this side of the house, to get the sun. She sits at the piano and rattles at a gay melody. Seeing that Paula's back is turned to them, Elian goes to Aubrey and kisses him. He returns the kiss almost furtively. As they separate, the servants re-enter, and proceed to carry out the breakfast table. Aubrey to Elian. I guess where you've been there's some gorse clinging to your frock. Elian removing a sprig of gorse from her skirt. Rover and I walked nearly as far as Black Moor. The poor fellow has a thorn in his pad. I am going upstairs for my tweezers. Aubrey Elian. She returns to him. Paula is a little depressed, out of sorts. She complains that she has no companion. Elian. I am with Paula nearly all the day, Papa. Aubrey. Ah, but you re such a little mouse. Paula likes cheerful people about her. Elian. I am afraid I am naturally rather silent, and it's so difficult to seem to be what one is not. Aubrey. I don't wish that, Elian. Elian. I will offer to go down to the village with Paula this morning, shall I? Aubrey touching her hand gently. Thank you, do. Elian. When I've looked after Rover, I'll come back to her. She goes out, Paula ceases playing, and turns on the music stool looking at Aubrey. Paula. Well, have you and Elian had your little confidence? Aubrey. Confidence? Paula. Do you think I couldn't feel it, like a pain between my shoulders? Aubrey. Elian is coming back in a few minutes to be with you. Bending over her. Paula, Paula dear, is this how you keep your promise? Paula. Oh. Rising impatiently and crossing swiftly to the settee, where she sits, moving restlessly. I can keep my promise. I am jealous, it won't be smothered. I see you looking at her, watching her, your voice drops when you speak to her. I know how fond you are of that girl, Aubrey. Aubrey. What would you have? I've no other home for her. She is my daughter. Paula. She is your saint. Saint Elian. Aubrey. You have often told me how good and sweet you think her. Paula. Good. Yes. Do you imagine that makes me less jealous? Going to him and clinging to his arm. Aubrey, there are two sorts of affection: the love for a woman you respect, and the love for a woman you love. She gets the first from you, I never can. Aubrey. Hush, hush. You don't realize what you say. Paula. If Elian cared for me only a little, it would be different. I shouldn't be jealous then. Why doesn't she care for me? Aubrey. She will, in time. Paula. You can say that without stuttering. Aubrey. Her disposition seems a little unresponsive. She resembles her mother in many ways. I can see it every day. Paula. She's marble. It's a shame. There's not the slightest excuse. For all she knows, I am as much a saint as she only married. Dearest, help me to win her over. Aubrey. Help you? Paula. You can. Teach her that it is her duty to love me. She hangs on to every word you speak. I am sure, Aubrey, that the love of a nice woman who believed me to be like herself would do me a world of good. You'd get the benefit of it as well as I. It would soothe me, it would make me less horribly restless, it would take this mischievous feeling from me. Coaxingly. Aubrey. Aubrey. Have patience, everything will come right. Paula. Yes, if you help me. Aubrey. In the meantime you will tear up your letter to Lady Oread, won't you? Paula. Kissing his hand. Of course I will, anything. Aubrey. Ah, thank you, dearest. Laughing. Why, good gracious. Ha, ha. Just imagine Saint Elian and that woman side by side. Paula going back with a cry. Ah. Aubrey. What? Paula passionately. It's Elian you reconsidering, not me? It's all Elian with you. Elian. Elian. Elian re-enters. Elian, did you call me, Paula? Clenching his hands, Aubrey turns away and goes out. Is Papa angry? Paula, I drive him distracted sometimes. There, I confess it. Elian, do you? Oh, why do you? Paula, because I am jealous. Elian, jealous? Paula, yes, of you. Elian is silent. Well, what do you think of that? Elian, I knew it, I've seen it. It hurts me dreadfully. What do you wish me to do? Go away? Paula, leave us. Beckoning her with a motion of the head. Look here. Elian goes to Paula slowly and unresponsively. You could cure me of my jealousy very easily. Why don't you like me? Elian, what do you mean by like you? I don't understand. Paula, love me. Elian, love is not a feeling that is under one's control. I shall alter as time goes on, perhaps. I didn't begin to love my father deeply till a few months ago, and then I obeyed my mother. Paula, ah, yes, you dream things, don't you see them in your sleep? You fancy your mother speaks to you? Elian, when you have lost your mother, it is a comfort to believe that she is dead only to this life, that she still watches over her child. I do believe that of my mother. Paula, well, and so you haven't been bidden to love me? Elian, after a pause, almost inaudibly. No. Paula, dreams are only a hash-up of one's day thoughts, I suppose you know. Think intently of anything, and it's bound to come back to you at night. I don't cultivate dreams myself. Elian, ah, I knew you would only sneer. Paula, I am not sneering, I am speaking the truth. I say that if you cared for me in the daytime, I should soon make friends with those nightmares of yours. Elian, why don't you try to look on me as your second mother? Of course there are not many years between us, but I am ever so much older than you in experience. I shall have no children of my own, I know that. It would be a real comfort to me if you would make me feel we belong to each other. Won't you? Perhaps you think I am odd, not nice. Well, the fact is I've two sides to my nature, and I've let the one almost smother the other. A few years ago I went through some trouble, and since then I haven't shed a tear. I believe if you put your arms round me just once I should run upstairs and have a good cry. There, I've talked to you as I've never talked to a woman in my life. Elian, you seem to fear me. Don't kiss me. With a cry, almost of despair, Elian turns from Paula and sinks onto the settee, covering her face with her hands. Paula indignantly. Oh! Why is it? How dare you treat me like this? What do you mean by it? What do you mean? A servant enters. Servant Mr. Drummle, ma'am. Kaylee Drummle, in riding dress, enters briskly. The servant retires. Paula recovering herself. Well, Kaylee. Drummle shaking hands with her cordially. How are you? Shaking hands with Elian, who rises. I saw you in the distance an hour ago, in the gorse near Stapleton S. Elian, I didn't see you, Mr. Drummle. Drummle, my dear Elian, it is my experience that no charming young lady of 19 ever does see a man of 45. Laughing. Ha, ha. Elian going to the door. Paula, Papa wishes me to drive down to the village with you this morning. Do you care to take me? Paula coldly. Oh, by all means. Pray tell Watts to balance the cart for 3. Elian goes out. Drummle, how's Aubrey? Paula, very well when Elian 's about the house. Drummle, and you? I needn't ask. Paula walking away to the window. Oh, a dog's life, my dear Kaylee, mine. Drum at? Paula doesn't that define a happy marriage? I am sleek, well kept, well fed, never without a bone to gnaw and fresh straw to lie upon. Gazing out of the window. Oh, dear me. Drum hm. Well, I heartily congratulate you on your kennel. The view from the terrace here is superb. Paula yes, I can see London. Drum London. Not quite so far, surely? Paula I can. Also the Mediterranean, on a fine day. I wonder what Algiers looks like this morning from the sea. Impulsively. Oh, Kaylee, do you remember those jolly times on board Peter Jarman's yacht when we lay off? Stopping suddenly, seeing Drummle staring at her. Good gracious! What are we talking about? Aubrey enters. Aubrey to Drummle. Dear old chap. Has Paula asked you? Paula not yet. Aubrey we want you to come to us, now that you relieving Mrs. Court Elian at once, today. Stay a month, as long as you please Paula? Paula as long as you can possibly endure it do, Kaylee. Drummle looking at Aubrey. Delighted. To Paula. Charming of you to have me. Paula my dear man, you re a blessing. I must telegraph to London for more fish. A strange appetite to cater for. Something to do, to do, to do. She goes out in a mood of almost childish delight. Drum lying Aubrey. Well? Aubrey with a wearied, anxious look. Well, Kaylee? Drummle how are you getting on? Aubrey my position doesn't grow less difficult. I told you, when I met you last week, of this feverish, jealous attachment of Paula's for Elian. Drummle yes. I hardly know why, but I came to the conclusion that you don't consider it an altogether fortunate attachment. Aubrey Elian doesn't respond to it. Drummle these are early days. Elian will warm towards your wife by and by. Aubrey ah, but there's the question, Kaylee. Drummle what question? Aubrey the question which positively distracts me. Elian is so different from most women, I don't believe a purer creature exists out of heaven. And I ask myself, am I doing right in exposing her to the influence of poor Paula's light, careless nature? Drummle my dear Aubrey. Aubrey that shocks you. So it does me. I assure you I long to urge my girl to break down the reserve which keeps her apart from Paula, but somehow I can't do it well, I don't do it. How can I make you understand? But when you come to us you'll understand quickly enough. Kaylee, there's hardly a subject you can broach on which poor Paula hasn't some strange, out-of-the-way thought to give utterance to, some curious, warped notion. They are not mere worldly thoughts unless, good God, they belong to the little hellish world which our blackguardism has created. No, her ideas have too little calculation in them to be called worldly. But it makes it the more dreadful that such thoughts should be ready, spontaneous, that expressing them has become a perfectly natural process, that her words, acts even, have almost lost their proper significance for her, and seem beyond her control. Ah, and the pain of listening to it all from the woman one loves, the woman one hoped to make happy and contented, who is really and truly a good woman, as it were, maimed. Well, this is my burden, and I shouldn't speak to you of it but for my anxiety about Elian. Elian. What is to be her future? It is in my hands, what am I to do? Kaylee, when I remember how Elian comes to me, from another world I always think, when I realize the charge that's laid on me, I find myself wishing, in a sort of terror, that my child were safe under the ground. Drummle, my dear Aubrey, aren't you making a mistake? Aubrey, very likely. What is it? Drummle, a mistake, not in regarding your Elian as an angel, but in believing that, under any circumstances, it would be possible for her to go through life without getting her white robe, shall we say, a little dusty at the hem? Don't take me for a cynic. I am sure there are many women upon earth who are almost divinely innocent, but being on earth, they must send their robes to the laundry occasionally. Ah, and it's right that they should have to do so, for what can they learn from the checking of their little washing bills but lessons of charity? Now I see but two courses open to you for the disposal of your angel. Aubrey, yes? Drummle, you must either restrict her to a paradise which is, like every earthly paradise, necessarily somewhat imperfect, or treat her as an ordinary flesh and blood young woman, and give her the advantages of that society to which she properly belongs. Aubrey, advantages? Drummle, my dear Aubrey, of all forms of innocence mere ignorance is the least admirable. Take my advice, let her walk and talk and suffer and be healed with the great crowd. Do it, and hope that she'll some day meet a good, honest fellow who'll make her life complete, happy, secure. Now you see what I am driving at. Aubrey, a sanguine program, my dear Kaylee. Oh, I am not pooh-poohing it. Putting sentiment aside, of course I know that a fortunate marriage for Elian would be the best, perhaps the only solution of my difficulty. But you forget the danger of the course you suggest. Drummle, danger? Aubrey, if Elian goes among men and women, how can she escape from learning, sooner or later, the history of poor Paula's old life? Drummle, hm. You remember the episode of the jeweller's son in the Arabian Nights? Of course you don't. Well, if your daughter lives, she can escape what you re afraid of. Aubrey gives a half-stifled exclamation of pain. And when she does hear the story, surely it would be better that she should have some knowledge of the world to help her to understand it. Aubrey, to understand. Drummle, to understand, to philosophies. Aubrey, to philosophies? Drummle, philosophy is toleration, and it is only one step from toleration to forgiveness. Aubrey, you rewrite, Kaylee, I believe you always are. Yes, yes. But, even if I had the courage to attempt to solve the problem of Elian's future in this way, I am helpless. Drummle, how? Aubrey, what means have I now of placing my daughter in the world I've left? Drummle, oh, some friend, some woman friend. Aubrey, I have none, they gone. Drummle, you wrong there, I know one Aubrey listening. That's Paula's cart. Let us discuss this again. Drummle, going up to the window and looking out. It isn't the dog cart. Turning to Aubrey. I hope you'll forgive me, old chap. Aubrey, what for? Drummle, whose wheels do you think have been cutting ruts in your immaculate drive? A servant enters. Servant to Aubrey. Mrs. Court Elian, sir. Aubrey, Mrs. Court Elian. After a short pause. Very well. The servant withdraws. What on earth is the meaning of this? Drummle, him. While I've been our old friend's guest, Aubrey, we have very naturally talked a good deal about you and yours. Aubrey, indeed, have you? Drummle, yes, and Alice Court Elian has arrived at the conclusion that it would have been far kinder had she called on Mrs. Tanqueray long ago. She's going abroad for Easter before settling down in London for the season, and I believe she has come over this morning to ask for Elian's companionship. Aubrey, oh, I see. Frowning. Quite a friendly little conspiracy, my dear Kaylee. Drummle, conspiracy? Not at all, I assure you. Laughing. Ha, ha. Elian enters from the hall with Mrs. Court Elian, a handsome, good-humoured, spirited woman of about 45. Elian Papa Mrs. Court Elian to Aubrey, shaking hands with him heartily. Well, Aubrey, how are you? I've just been telling this great girl of yours that I knew her when she was a sad-faced, pale baby. How is Mrs. Tanqueray? I have been a bad neighbor, and I am here to beg forgiveness. Is she indoors? Aubrey, she's upstairs putting on a hat, I believe. Mrs. Court Elian sitting comfortably. Ah. She looks round. Drummle and Elian are talking together in the hall. We used to be very frank with each other, Aubrey. I suppose the old footing is no longer possible, eh? Aubrey, if so, I am not entirely to blame, Mrs. Court Elian. Mrs. Court Elian, Mrs. Court Elian? No, I admit it. But you must make some little allowance for me, Mr. Tanqueray. Your first wife and I, as girls, were like two cherries on one stalk, and then I was the confidential friend of your married life. That post, perhaps, wasn't altogether a sinecure. And now, well, when a woman gets to my age, I suppose she's a stupid, prejudiced, conventional creature. However, I've got over it, and giving him her hand, I hope you'll be enormously happy and let me be a friend once more. Aubrey, thank you, Alice. Mrs. Court Elian, that's right. I feel more cheerful than I've done for weeks. But I suppose it would serve me right if the second Mrs. Tanqueray showed me the door. Do you think she will? Aubrey, listening. Here is my wife. Mrs. Court Elian rises, and Paula enters, dressed for driving. She stops abruptly on seeing Mrs. Court Elian. Paula dear, Mrs. Court Elian has called to see you. Paula starts, looks at Mrs. Court Elian irresolutely, then after a slight pause barely touches Mrs. Court Elian's extended hand. Paula, whose manner now alternates between deliberate insolence and assumed sweetness. Mrs. What name, Aubrey? Aubrey Mrs. Court Elian. Paula Court Elian? Oh, yes. Court Elian. Mrs. Court Elian, carefully guarding herself throughout against any expression of resentment. Aubrey ought to have told you that Alice Court Elian and he are very old friends. Paula, oh, very likely he has mentioned the circumstance. I have quite a wretched memory. Mrs. Court Elian, you know we are neighbors, Mrs. Tanqueray. Paula, neighbors? Are we really? You sit down? They both sit. Neighbors. That's most interesting. Mrs. Court Elian, very near neighbors. You can see my roof from your windows. Paula, I fancy I have observed a roof. But you have been away from home, you have only just returned. Mrs. Court Elian, I? What makes you think that? Paula, why, because it is 2 months since we came to Higher Combe, and I don't remember your having called. Mrs. Court Elian, your memory is now terribly accurate. No, I've not been away from home, and it is to explain my neglect that I am here, rather unceremoniously, this morning. Paula, oh, to explain quite so. With mock solicitude. Ah, you've been very ill, I ought to have seen that before. Mrs. Court Elian, ill. Paula, you look dreadfully pulled down. We poor women show illness so plainly in our faces, don't we? Aubrey anxiously. Paula dear, Mrs. Court Elian is the picture of health. Mrs. Court Elian with some asperity. I have never felt better in my life. Paula looking round innocently. Have I said anything awkward? Aubrey, tell Mrs. Court Elian how stupid and thoughtless I always am. Mrs. Court Elian to Drummle, who is now standing close to her. Really, Kaylee? He soothes her with a nod and smile and a motion of his finger to his lip. Mrs. Tanqueray, I am afraid my explanation will not be quite so satisfactory as either of those you have just helped me to. You may have heard, but, if you have heard, you have doubtless forgotten that 20 years ago, when your husband first lived here, I was a constant visitor at Higher Combe. Paula, 20 years ago, fancy. I was a naughty little child then. Mrs. Cordellian, possibly. Well, at that time, until the end of her life, my affections were centered upon the lady of this house. Paula, were they? That was very sweet of you. Elian approaches Mrs. Cordellian, listening intently to her. Mrs. Cordellian, I will say no more on that score, but I must add this: when, 2 months ago, you came here, I realized, perhaps for the first time, that I was a middle-aged woman, and that it had become impossible for me to accept without some effort a breaking in upon many tender associations. There, Mrs. Tanqueray, that is my confession. Will you try to understand it and pardon me? Paula, watching Elian sneeringly. Elian dear, you appear to be very interested in Mrs. Cordellian's reminiscences. I don't think I can do better than make you my mouthpiece. There is such sympathy between us. What do you say, can we bring ourselves to forgive Mrs. Cordellian for neglecting us for 2 weary months? Mrs. Cordellian to Elian, pleasantly. Well, Elian? With a little cry of tenderness, Elian impulsively sits beside Mrs. Cordellian and takes her hand. My dear child. Paula, in an undertone to Aubrey. Elian isn't so very slow in taking to Mrs. Cordellian. Mrs. Cordellian to Paula and Aubrey. Come, this encourages me to broach my scheme. Mrs. Tanqueray, it strikes me that you two good people are just now excellent company for each other, while Elian would perhaps be glad of a little peep into the world you are anxious to avoid. Now, I am going to Paris tomorrow for a week or 2 before settling down in Chester Square, so don't gasp, both of you. If this girl is willing, and you have made no other arrangements for her, will you let her come with me to Paris, and afterwards remain with me in town during the season? Elian utters an exclamation of surprise. Paula is silent. What do you say? Aubrey. Paula dear. Hesitatingly. My dear Mrs. Cordellian, this is wonderfully kind of you. I am really at a loss to Kaylee? Drummo, watching Paula apprehensively. Kind. Now I must say I don't think so. I begged Alice to take me to Paris, and she declined. I am thrown over for Elian. Ha! Ha! Mrs. Cordellian, laughing. What nonsense you talk, Kaylee. The laughter dies out. Paula remains quite still. Aubrey. Paula dear. Paula, slowly collecting herself. One moment. I don't quite to Mrs. Cordellian. You propose that Elian leaves Higher Combe almost at once and remains with you some months? Mrs. Cordellian, it would be a mercy to me. You can afford to be generous to a desolate old widow. Come, Mrs. Tanqueray, 1 you spare her? Paula. 1 I spare her. Suspiciously. Have you mentioned your plan to Aubrey before I came in? Mrs. Cordellian. No, I had no opportunity. Paula. Nor to Elian? Mrs. Cordellian. Oh, no. Paula, looking about her, in suppressed excitement. This hasn't been discussed at all, behind my back? Mrs. Cordellian. My dear Mrs. Tanqueray. Paula. Elian, let us hear your voice in the matter. Elian. I should like to go with Mrs. Cordellian. Paula. Elian. That is, if Paula. If what? Elian, looking towards Aubrey, appealingly. Papa. Paula, in a hard voice. Oh, of course I forgot. To Aubrey. My dear Aubrey, it rests with you, naturally, whether I am to lose Elian. Aubrey. Lose Elian? Advancing to Paula. There is no question of losing Elian. You would see Elian in town constantly when she returned from Paris. Isn't that so, Mrs. Court Elian? Mrs. Court Elian certainly. Paula laughing softly. Oh, I didn't know I should be allowed that privilege. Mrs. Court Elian privilege, my dear Mrs. Tanqueray. Paula ha, ha. That makes all the difference, doesn't it? Aubrey with assumed gaiety. All the difference? I should think so. To Elian, laying his hand upon her head, tenderly. And you are quite certain you wish to see what the world is like on the other side of Blackmoor? Elian, if you are willing, Papa, I am quite certain. Aubrey looking at Paula irresolutely, then speaking with an effort. Then I am willing. Paula rising and striking the table lightly with her clenched hand. That decides it. There is a general movement. Excitedly to Mrs. Court Elian, who advances towards her. When do you want her? Mrs. Court Elian, we go to town this afternoon at 5 o'clock, and sleep tonight at Bayless's. There is barely time for her to make her preparations. Paula, I will undertake that she is ready. Mrs. Court Elian, I've a great deal to scramble through at home too, as you may guess. Goodbye. Paula turning away. Mrs. Court Elian is going. Paula stands looking out of the window, with her back to those in the room. Mrs. Court Elian to Drummle. Kaylee Drummle to her. Mrs. Court Elian, I've gone through it, for the sake of Aubrey and his child, but I feel 100. Is that a mad woman? Drummle, of course, all jealous women are mad. He goes out with Aubrey. Mrs. Court Elian hesitatingly, to Paula. Goodbye, Mrs. Tanqueray. Paula inclines her head with the slightest possible movement, then resumes her former position. Elian comes from the hall and takes Mrs. Court Elian out of the room. After a brief silence, Paula turns with a fierce cry, and hurriedly takes off her coat and hat, and tosses them upon the settee. Paula, oh! 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 She drops into the chair as Aubrey returns. He stands looking at her. Who is that? Aubrey, you have altered your mind about going out? Paula, yes. Please to ring the bell. Aubrey touching the bell. You are angry about Mrs. Court Elian and Elian. Let me try to explain my reasons. Paula, be careful what you say to me just now. I have never felt like this except once in my life. Be careful what you say to me. A servant enters. Paula rising. Is Watts at the door with the cart? Servant, yes, ma'am. Paula, tell him to drive down to the post office directly, with this. Picking up the letter which has been lying upon the table. Aubrey, with that? Paula, yes. My letter to Lady O'Reid. Giving the letter to the servant, who goes out. Aubrey, surely you don't wish me to countermand any order of yours to a servant? Call the man back, take the letter from him. Paula, I have not the slightest intention of doing so. Aubrey, I must, then. Going to the door. She snatches up her hat and coat and follows him. What are you going to do? Paula, if you stop that letter, walk out of the house. He hesitates, then leaves the door. Aubrey, I am right in believing that to be the letter inviting George O'Reid and his wife to stay here, am I not? Paula, oh yes, quite right. Aubrey, let it go, I'll write to him by and by. Paula facing him. You dare. Aubrey, hush, Paula. Paula, insult me again and, upon my word, I'll go straight out of the house. Aubrey, insult you? Paula, insult me. What else is it? My God! What else is it? What do you mean by taking Elian from me? Aubrey, listen. Paula, listen to me. And how do you take her? You pack her off in the care of a woman who has deliberately held aloof from me, who has thrown mud at me. Yet this court alien creature has only to put foot here once to be entrusted with the charge of the girl you know I dearly want to keep near me. Aubrey, Paula dear. Hear me. Paula, ah. Of course, of course. I can be so useful to your daughter as such people as this, and so I am to be given the go-by for any town friend of yours who turns up and chooses to patronize us. Ha! Very well, at any rate, as you take Elian from me you justify my looking for companions where I can most readily find em. Aubrey, you wish me to fully appreciate your reason for sending that letter to Lady O'Reid? Paula, precisely I do. Aubrey, and could you, after all, go back to associates of that order? It's not possible. Paula mockingly. What, not after the refining influence of these intensely respectable surroundings? Going to the door. We LLC. Aubrey, Paula. Paula violently. We LLC. She goes out. He stands still looking after her. Act 3, the drawing room at Higher Combe. Facing the spectator are two large French windows, sheltered by a veranda, leading into the garden. On the right is a door opening into a small hall. The fireplace, with a large mirror above it, is on the left-hand side of the room, and higher up in the same wall are double doors recessed. The room is richly furnished, and everything betokens taste and luxury. The windows are open, and there is moonlight in the garden. Lady O'Reid, a pretty, affected doll of a woman with a mincing voice and flaxen hair, is sitting on the ottoman, her head resting against the drum, and her eyes closed. Paula, looking pale, worn, and thoroughly unhappy, is sitting at a table. Both are in sumptuous dinner gowns. Lady O'Reid opening her eyes. Well, I dropped off. Feeling her hair. Just fancy. Where are the men? Paula icily. Outside, smoking. A servant enters with coffee, which he hands to Lady O'Reid. Sir George O'Reid comes in by the window. He is a man of about 35, with a low forehead, a receding chin, a vacuous expression, and an ominous redness about the nose. Lady O'Reid taking coffee. Here's Dodo. Sir George, I say, the flies under the veranda make you swear. The servant hands coffee to Paula, who declines it, then to Sir George, who takes a cup. Hi. Wait a bit. He looks at the tray searchingly, then puts back his cup. Never mind. Quietly to Lady O'Reid. I say, they reduced Sparren with their liqueur, and tea they? The servant goes out at window. Paula to Sir George. One tea, you take coffee, George? Sir George, no, thanks. It's gettin' near time for a whiskey and potass. Approaching Paula, regarding Lady O'Reid admiringly. I say, Bertie looks rippin' tonight, don't she? Paula, your wife? Sir George, yes, Bertie. Paula, rippin'? Sir George, yes. Paula, quite rippin'. He moves round to the settee. Paula watches him with distaste, then rises and walks away. Sir George falls asleep on the settee. Lady O'Reid, Paula love, I fancied you and Aubrey were a little more friendly at dinner. You haven't made it up, have you? Paula, we? Oh, no, we speak before others, that's all. Lady O'Reid, and how long do you intend to carry on this game, dear? Paula turning away impatiently. I really can't tell you. Lady O'Reid, sit down, old girl, don't be so fidgety. Paula sits on the upper seat of the ottoman with her back to Lady O'Reid. Of course, it's my duty, as an old friend, to give you a good talking to. Paula glares at her suddenly and fiercely, but really I've found one gets so many smacks in the face through interfering in matrimonial squabbles that I've determined to drop it. Paula, I think you wise. Lady Oread, however, I must say that I do wish you'd look at marriage in a more solemn light, just as I do, in fact. It is such a beautiful thing, marriage, and if people in our position don't respect it, and set a good example by living happily with their husbands, what can you expect from the middle classes? When did this sad state of affairs between you and Aubrey actually begin? Paula, actually, a fortnight and 3 days ago. I haven't calculated the minutes. Lady Oread, a day or two before Dodo and I turned up arrived. Paula, yes. One always remembers one thing by another. We left off speaking to each other the morning I wrote asking you to visit us. Lady Oread, lucky for you I was able to pop down, wasn't it, dear? Paula, glaring at her again. Most fortunate. Lady Oread, a serious split with your husband without a pal on the premises, I should say, without a friend in the house, would be most unpleasant. Paula, turning to her abruptly. This place must be horribly doleful for you and George just now. At least you ought to consider him before me. Why don't you leave me to my difficulties? Lady Oread, oh, we're quite comfortable, dear, thank you both of us. George and me are so wrapped up in each other, it doesn't matter where we are. I don't want to crow over you, old girl, but I've got a perfect husband. Sir George is now fast asleep, his head thrown back and his mouth open, looking hideous. Paula, glancing at Sir George. So you've given me to understand. Lady Oread, not that we don't have our little differences. Why, we fell out only this very morning. You remember the diamond and ruby tiara Charlie Prestwick gave poor dear Connie Tierlemont years ago, don't you? Paula, no, I do not. Lady Oread, no? Well, it's in the market. Benjamin of Piccadilly has got it in his shop window, and I've set my heart on it. Paula, you consider it quite necessary? Lady Oread, yes, because what I say to Dodo is this: a lady of my station must smother herself with hair ornaments. It's different with you, love, people don't look for so much blaze from you, but I've got rank to keep up, haven't I? Paula, yes. Lady Oread, well, that was the cause of the little set to between I and Dodo this morning. He broke 2 chairs, he was in such a rage. I forgot, they re your chairs, do you mind? Paula, no. Lady Oread, you know, poor Dodo can't lose his temper without smashing something. If it isn't a chair, it's a mirror, if it isn't that, it's china, a bit of Dresden for choice. Dear old pet. He loves a bit of Dresden when he's furious. He doesn't really throw things at me, dear, he simply lifts them up and drops them, like a gentleman. I expect our room upstairs will look rather wrecky before I get that tiara. Paula, excuse the suggestion, perhaps your husband can't afford it. Lady Oread, oh, how dreadfully changed you are, Paula. Dodo can always mortgage something, or borrow of his ma. What is coming to you? Paula, ah. She sits at the piano and touches the keys. Lady Oread, oh, yes, do play. That's the one thing I envy you for. Paula, what shall I play? Lady Oread, what was that heavenly piece you gave us last night, dear? Paula, a bit of Schubert. Would you like to hear it again? Lady Oread, you don't know any comic songs, do you? Paula, I am afraid not. Lady Oread, I leave it to you, then. Paula plays. Aubrey and Kaylee Druml appear outside the window, they look into the room. Aubrey to Druml. You can see her face in that mirror. Poor girl, how ill and wretched she looks. Druml, when are the Oreads going? Aubrey heaven knows. Entering the room. Drummel but you re-entertaining them, what's it to do with heaven? Following Aubrey. Aubrey do you know, Kaylee, that even the oreads serve a useful purpose? My wife actually speaks to me before our guests think of that. I've come to rejoice at the presence of the oreads. Drummel I dare say, we re-taught that beetles are sent for a benign end. Aubrey Kaylee, talk to Paula again tonight. Drummel certainly, if I get the chance. Aubrey let us contrive it. George is asleep, perhaps I can get that doll out of the way. As they advance into the room, Paula abruptly ceases playing and finds interest in a volume of music. Sir George is now nodding and snoring apoplectically. Lady Oread, whenever you feel inclined for a game of billiards I am at your service. Lady Oread jumping up. Charmed, I am sure. I really thought you'd forgotten poor little me. Oh, look at Dodo. Aubrey no, don't wake him, he's tired. Lady Oread I must, he looks so plain. Rousing Sir George. Dodo. Sir George stupidly. Oh. Lady Oread Dodo, dear, you were snoring. Sir George oh, I say, you coulda told me that by and by. Aubrey you want a cigar, George, come into the billiard room. Giving his arm to Lady Oread. Kaylee, bring Paula. Aubrey and Lady Oread go out. Sir George rising. Hey, what? Billiard room. Looking at his watch. How goes the? Phew. Olo. Whiskey and potass. He goes rapidly after Aubrey and Lady Oread. Paula resumes playing. Paula after a pause. Don't moon about after me, Kaylee, follow the others. Drummel thanks, by and by. Sitting. That's pretty. Paula after another pause, still playing. I wish you wouldn't stare so. Drummel was I staring? I am sorry. She plays a little longer, then stops suddenly, rises, and goes to the window, where she stands looking out. Drummel moves from the ottoman to the settee. A lovely night. Paula startled. Oh. Without turning to him. Why do you hop about like a monkey? Drummel hot rooms play the deuce with the nerves. Now, it would have done you good to have walked in the garden with us after dinner and made merry. Why didn't you? Paula you know why. Drummel you rethinking of the difference between you and Aubrey? Paula yes, I am thinking of it. Drummel well, so am I how long? Paula getting on for 3 weeks. Drummel bless me, it must be. And this would have been such a night to have healed it. Moonlight, the stars, the scent of flowers, and yet enough darkness to enable a kind woman to rest her hand for an instant on the arm of a good fellow who loves her. Ah, ha! It's a wonderful power, dear Mrs. Aubrey, the power of an offended woman. Only realize it. Just that one touch the mere tips of her fingers and, for herself and another, she changes the color of the whole world. Paula turning to him, calmly. Kaylee, my dear man, you talk exactly like a very romantic old lady. She leaves the window and sits playing with the knickknacks on the table. Drummel to himself. That hasn't he done it? Well ha. I accept the suggestion. An old woman, eh? Paula oh, I didn't intend Drummel but why not? I've every qualification well, almost. And I confess it would have given this withered bosom a throb of grandmotherly satisfaction if I could have seen you and Aubrey at peace before I take my leave tomorrow. Paula tomorrow, Kaylee. Drummel I must. Paula oh, this house is becoming unendurable. Druml you re very kind. But you got the orades. Paula fiercely. The orades. I hate the orades. I lie awake at night, hating them. Druml pardon me, Ive understood that their visit is, in some degree, owing to him. Your suggestion. Paula heavens. That doesn't make me like them better. Somehow or another, I've outgrown these people. This woman I used to think her jolly. Sickens me. I can breathe when she's near me. The whiff of her handkerchief turns me faint. And she patronizes me by the hour, until I feel my nails growing longer with every word she speaks. Druml my dear lady, why on earth don't you say all this to Aubrey? Paula oh, I've been such an utter fool, Kaylee. Druml soothingly. Well, mention it to Aubrey. Paula no, you don't understand. What do you think I've done? Druml done. What, since you invited the orades? Paula yes, I must tell you Druml perhaps you'd better not. Paula look here. I've intercepted some letters from Mrs. Cordelia and Elian to him. Producing 3 unopened letters from the bodice of her dress. There are the accursed things. From Paris 2 from the Cordelian woman, the other from Elian. Druml but why? Paula I don't know. Yes, I do. I saw letters coming from Elian to her father, not a line to me, not a line. And one morning it happened I was downstairs before he was, and I spied this one lying with his heap on the breakfast table, and I slipped it into my pocket out of malice, Kaylee, pure devilry. And a day or 2 afterwards I met Elwes the postman at the lodge, and took the letters from him, and found these others amongst them. I felt simply fiendish when I saw them, fiendish. Returning the letters to her bodice. And now I carry them about with me, and they re-scorching me like a mustard plaster. Druml oh, this accounts for Aubrey not hearing from Paris lately. Paula that's an ingenious conclusion to arrive at. Of course it does. With an hysterical laugh. Ha, ha. Druml well. Laughing. Ha, ha, ha. Paula turning upon him. I suppose it is amusing. Druml I beg pardon. Paula heaven knows I've little enough to brag about. I am a bad lot, but not in mean tricks of this sort. In all my life this is the most caddish thing I've done. How am I to get rid of these letters? That's what I want to know. How am I to get rid of them? Druml if I were you I should take Aubrey aside and put them into his hands as soon as possible. Paula what? And tell him to his face that I. No, thank you. I suppose you wouldn't like to. Druml no, I want touch him. Paula and you call yourself my friend? Druml good-humoredly. No, I don't. Paula perhaps I'll tie them together and give them to his man in the morning. Druml that one avoid an explanation. Paula recklessly. Oh, then he must miss them. Druml and trace them. Paula throwing herself upon the ottoman. I don't care. Druml I know you don't, but let me send him to you now, may I? Paula now. What do you think a woman's made of? I couldn't stand it, Kaylee. I haven't slept for nights, and last night there was thunder, too. I believe I've got the horrors. Druml taking the little hand mirror from the table. You'll sleep well enough when you deliver those letters. Come, Mrs. Aubrey a good night's rest. Holding the mirror before her face. It's quite time. She looks at herself for a moment, then snatches the mirror from him. Paula you brute, Kaylee, to show me that. Druml then may I? Be guided by a poor old woman. May I? Paula, you'll kill me, amongst you. Drummel, what do you say? Paula, after a pause. Very well. He nods his head and goes out rapidly. She looks after him for a moment, and calls Kaylee. Kaylee. Then she again produces the letters, deliberately, one by one, fingering them with aversion. Suddenly she starts, turning her head towards the door. Ah! Aubrey enters quickly. Aubrey, Paula. Paula handing him the letters, her face averted. There. He examines the letters, puzzled, and looks at her inquiringly. They are many days old. I stole them, I suppose, to make you anxious and unhappy. He looks at the letters again, then lays them aside on the table. Aubrey gently. Paula, dear, it doesn't matter. Paula after a short pause. Why do you take it like this? Aubrey, what did you expect? Paula, oh, but I suppose silent reproaches are really the severest. And then, naturally, you are itching to open your letters. She crosses the room as if to go. Aubrey, Paula. She pauses. Surely it's all over now? Paula, all over. Mockingly. Has my stepdaughter returned then? When did she arrive? I haven't heard of it. Aubrey, you can be very cruel. Paula, that word "s" always on a man's lips, he uses it if his soup's cold. With another movement as if to go. Need we, Aubrey? I know I've wounded you, Paula. But isn't there any way out of this? Paula, when does Elian return? Tomorrow? Next week? Aubrey wearily. Oh. Why should we grudge Elian the little pleasure she is likely to find in Paris and in London? Paula, I grudge her nothing, if that essay hit at me. But with that woman. Aubrey, it must be that woman or another. You know that at present we are unable to give Elian the opportunity of Paula of mixing with respectable people. Aubrey, the opportunity of gaining friends, experience, ordinary knowledge of the world. If you are interested in Elian, can't you see how useful Mrs. Court Elian's good offices are? Paula, may I put one question? At the end of the London season, when Mrs. Court Elian has done with Elian, is it quite understood that the girl comes back to us? Aubrey is silent. Is it? Is it? Aubrey, let us wait till the end of the season, Paula. Oh. I knew it. You only fooling me, you put me off with any trash. I believe you've sent Elian away, not for the reasons you give, but because you don't consider me a decent companion for her, because you afraid she might get a little of her innocence rubbed off in my company? Come, isn't that the truth? Be honest. Isn't that it? Aubrey, yes. There is a moment's silence on both sides. Paula with uplifted hands as if to strike him. Oh. Aubrey taking her by the wrists. Sit down. Sit down. He puts her into a chair, she shakes herself free with a cry. Now listen to me. Fond as you are, Paula, of harking back to your past, there's one chapter of it you always let alone. I've never asked you to speak of it, you've never offered to speak of it. I mean the chapter that relates to the time when you were like Elian. She attempts to rise, he restrains her. No, no. Paula, I don't choose to talk about that time. I want to satisfy your curiosity. Aubrey, my dear Paula, I have no curiosity. I know what you were at Elian's age. I'll tell you. You hadn't a thought that wasn't a wholesome one, you hadn't an impulse that didn't tend towards good, you never harbored a notion you couldn't have gossiped about to a parcel of children. She makes another effort to rise. He lays his hand lightly on her shoulder. And this was a very few years back. There are days now when you look like a schoolgirl, but think of the difference between the two, Paulus. You'll have to think hard, because after a cruel life one's perceptions grow a thick skin. But, for God's sake, do think till you get these two images clearly in your mind, and then ask yourself what sort of a friend such a woman as you are today would have been for the girl of 7 or 8 years ago. Paula, rising. How dare you? I could be almost as good a friend to Elian as her own mother would have been had she lived. I know what you mean. How dare you? Aubrey, you say that, very likely you believe it. But you re-blind, Paula, you re-blind. You. Every belief that a young, pure-minded girl holds sacred, that you once held sacred, you now make a target for a jest, a sneer, a paltry cynicism. I tell you, you re not mistress any longer of your thoughts or your tongue. Why, how often, sitting between you and Elian, have I seen her cheeks turn scarlet as you've rattled off some tale that belongs by right to the club or the smoking room? Have you noticed the blush? If you have, has the cause of it ever struck you? And this is the girl you say you love, I admit that you do love, whose love you expect in return. Oh, Paula, I make the best, the only, excuse for you when I tell you you re-blind. Paula, Elian blushes easily. Aubrey, you blushed as easily a few years ago. Paula, after a short pause. Well. Have you finished your sermon? Aubrey, with a gesture of despair. Oh, Paula. Going up to the window and standing with his back to the room. Paula, to herself. A few years ago. She walks slowly towards the door, then suddenly drops upon the ottoman in a paroxysm of weeping. Oh God! A few years ago. Aubrey, going to her. Paula. Paula, sobbing. Oh, don't touch me. Aubrey, Paula. Paula, oh, go away from me. He goes back a few steps, and after a little while she becomes calmer and rises unsteadily, then in an altered tone. Look here. He advances a step, she checks him with a quick gesture. Look here. Get rid of these people, Mabel and her husband, as soon as possible. I've done with them. Aubrey, in a whisper. Paula. Paula, and then when the time comes for Elian to leave Mrs. Court, Elian, give me another chance. He advances again, but she shrinks away. No, no. She goes out by the door on the right. He sinks onto the settee, covering his eyes with his hands. There is a brief silence, then a servant enters. Servant, Mrs. Court, Elian, sir, with Miss Elian. Aubrey rises to meet Mrs. Court, Elian, who enters, followed by Elian, both being in traveling dresses. The servant withdraws. Mrs. Court, Elian, shaking hands with Aubrey. Oh, my dear Aubrey. Aubrey, Mrs. Court, Elian. Kissing Elian. Elian, dear. Elian, Papa, is all well at home? Mrs. Court, Elian, we re shockingly anxious. Aubrey, yes, all's well. This is quite unexpected. To Mrs. Court, Elian. You've found Paris insufferably hot? Mrs. Court, Elian, insufferably hot. Paris is pleasant enough. We've had no letter from you. Aubrey, I wrote to Elian a week ago. Mrs. Court, Elian, without alluding to the subject I had written to you upon. Aubrey, thinking. Ah, of course, Mrs. Court, Elian, and since then we've both written and you've been absolutely silent. Oh, it's too bad. Aubrey, picking up the letters from the table. It isn't altogether my fault. Here are the letters, Elian, Papa. Mrs. Court, Elian, they unopened. Aubrey, an accident delayed their reaching me till this evening. I am afraid this has upset you very much. Mrs. Court, Elian, upset me. Elian in an undertone to Mrs. Court Elian. Never mind. Not now, dear, not tonight. Aubrey at Mrs. Court Elian to Elian aloud. Child, run away and take your things off. She doesn't look as if she'd journeyed from Paris today. Aubrey Ive never seen her with such a color. Taking Elian's hands. Elian to Aubrey, in a faint voice. Papa, Mrs. Court Elian has been so very, very kind to me, but I have come home. She goes out. Aubrey come home. To Mrs. Court Elian. Elian returns to us, then? Mrs. Court Elian, that's the very point I put to you in my letters, and you oblige me to travel from Paris to Willowmere on a warm day to settle it. I think perhaps it's right that Elian should be with you just now, although my dear friend, circumstances are a little altered. Aubrey Alice, you in some trouble. Mrs. Court Elian, well yes, I am in trouble. You remember pretty little Mrs. Brereton who was once Caroline Ardale? Aubrey quite well. Mrs. Court Elian, she's a widow now, poor thing. She has the entresol of the house where we've been lodging in the Avenue de Friedland. Caroline's a dear chum of mine, she formed a great liking for Elian. Aubrey, I am very glad. Mrs. Court Elian, yes, it's nice for her to meet her mother's friends. That young Hugh Ardale the papers were full of some time ago, he's Caroline Brereton's brother, you know. Aubrey, no, I didn't know. What did he do? I forget. Mrs. Court Elian checked one of those horrid mutinies at some faraway station in India, marched down with a handful of his men and a few faithful natives, and held the place until he was relieved. They gave him his company and a VC for it. Aubrey, and he's Mrs. Brereton's brother? Mrs. Court Elian, yes. He's with his sister was, rather in Paris. He's home invalid. Good gracious, Aubrey, why don't you help me out? Can't you guess what has occurred? Aubrey Alice. Mrs. Court Elian, young Ardale Elian. Aubrey, an attachment? Mrs. Court Elian, yes, Aubrey. After a little pause. Well, I suppose I've got myself into sad disgrace. But really I didn't foresee anything of this kind. A serious, reserved child like Elian, and a boyish, high-spirited soldier, it never struck me as being likely. Aubrey paces to and fro thoughtfully. I did all I could directly Captain Ardale wrote to you at once. Why on earth don't you receive your letters promptly, and when you do get them why can't you open them? I endured the anxiety till last night, and then made up my mind home. Of course, it has worried me terribly. My head's bursting. Are there any salts about? Aubrey fetches a bottle from the cabinet and hands it to her. We've had one of those hateful smooth crossings that won't let you be properly indisposed. Aubrey, my dear Alice, I assure you I've no thought of blaming you. Mrs. Court Elian, that statement always precedes a quarrel. Aubrey, I don't know whether this is the worst or the best luck. How will my wife regard it? Is Captain Ardale a good fellow? Mrs. Court Elian, my dear Aubrey, you'd better read up the accounts of his wonderful heroism. Face to face with death for a whole week, always with a smile and a cheering word for the poor helpless souls depending on him. Of course, it's that has stirred the depths of your child's nature. I've watched her while we've been dragging the story out of him, and if angels look different from Elian at that moment, I don't desire to meet any, that's all. Aubrey, if you were in my position? But you can judge. Mrs. Court Elian, why, if I had a marriageable daughter of my own and Captain Ardale proposed for her, naturally I should cry my eyes out all night, but I should thank heaven in the morning. Aubrey, you believe so thoroughly in him? Mrs. Courtelian, do you think I should have only a headache at this minute if I didn't? Look here, you've got to see me down the lane, that's the least you can do, my friend. Come into my house for a moment and shake hands with Hugh. Aubrey, what, is he here? Mrs. Courtelian, he came through with us, to present himself formally tomorrow. Where are my gloves? Aubrey fetches them from the ottoman. Make my apologies to Mrs. Tanqueray, please. She's well, I hope? Going towards the door. I can feel sorry she hasn't seen me in this condition. Elian enters. Elian to Mrs. Courtelian. I've been waiting to wish you good night. I was afraid I'd missed you. Mrs. Courtelian, good night, Elian. Elian in a low voice, embracing Mrs. Courtelian. I can thank you. Dear Mrs. Courtelian. Mrs. Courtelian, her arms round Elian, in a whisper to Aubrey. Speak a word to her. Mrs. Courtelian goes out. Aubrey to Elian. Elian, I am going to see Mrs. Courtelian home. Tell Paula where I am, explain, dear. Going to the door. Elian, her head drooping. Yes. Quickly. Father. You are angry with me, disappointed? Aubrey, angry? No. Elian, disappointed? Aubrey, smiling and going to her and taking her hand. If so, it's only because you've shaken my belief in my discernment. I thought you took after your poor mother a little, Elian, but there's a look on your face tonight, dear, that I never saw on hers, never, never. Elian, leaning her head on his shoulder. Perhaps I ought not to have gone away? Aubrey, hush. You quite happy? Elian, yes. Aubrey, that's right. Then, as you are quite happy, there is something I particularly want you to do for me, Elian. Elian, what is that? Aubrey, be very gentle with Paula. Will you? Elian, you think I have been unkind. Aubrey, kissing her upon the forehead. Be very gentle with Paula. He goes out and she stands looking after him, then, as she turns thoughtfully from the door, a rose is thrown through the window and falls at her feet. She picks up the flower wonderingly and goes to the window. Elian, starting back. Hugh. Hugh Ardale, a handsome young man of about 27, with a boyish face and manner, appears outside the window. Hugh, Nellie. Nellie, dear. Elian, what's the matter? Hugh, hush. Nothing. It's only fun. Laughing. Ha, ha, ha. I've found out that Mrs. Courtelian's meadow runs up to your father's plantation. I've come through a gap in the hedge. Elian, why, Hugh? Hugh, I am miserable at the Warren, it's so different from the Avenue de Friedland. Don't look like that. Upon my word, I meant just to peep at your home and go back, but I saw figures moving about here, and came nearer, hoping to get a glimpse of you. Was that your father? Entering the room. Elian, yes. Hugh, isn't this fun? A rabbit ran across my foot while I was hiding behind that old yew. Elian, you must go away, it's not right for you to be here like this. Hugh, but it's only fun, I tell you. You take everything so seriously. Do wish me good night. Elian, we have said good night. Hugh, in the hall at the Warren before Mrs. Courtelian and a manservant. Oh, it's so different from the Avenue de Friedland. Elian, giving him her hand hastily. Good night, Hugh. Hugh, is that all? We might be the merest acquaintances. He momentarily embraces her, but she releases herself. Elian, it's when you like this that you make me feel utterly miserable. Throwing the rose from her angrily. Oh. Hugh Ive offended you now, I suppose? Elian yes. Hugh forgive me, Nelly. Come into the garden for 5 minutes, we stroll down to the plantation. Elian no, no. Hugh for 2 minutes to tell me you forgive me. Elian I forgive you. Hugh evidently. I shan't sleep a wink tonight after this. What a fool I am. Come down to the plantation. Make it up with me. Elian there is somebody coming into this room. Do you wish to be seen here? Hugh I shall wait for you behind that yew tree. You must speak to me. Nelly. He disappears. Paula enters. Paula Elian. Elian you are very surprised to see me, Paula, of course. Paula why are you here? Why aren't you with your friend? Elian Ive come home if you have me. We left Paris this morning, MRS Court Elian brought me back. She was here a minute or two ago, Papa has just gone with her to the Warren. He asked me to tell you. Paula there are some people staying with us that I'd rather you didn't meet. It was hardly worth your while to return for a few hours. Elian a few hours? Paula well, when do you go to London? Elian I don't think I go to London, after all. Paula eagerly. You've quarrelled with her? Elian no, 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 not that, but Paula. In an altered tone. Paula. Paula startled. Elian goes deliberately to Paula and kisses her. Elian. Elian kiss me. Paula what's come to you? Elian I want to behave differently to you in the future. Is it too late? Paula too late. Impulsively kissing Elian and crying. No no no. No no. Elian Paula, don't cry. Paula wiping her eyes. I am a little shaky, I haven't been sleeping. It's all right talk to me. Elian there is something I want to tell you Paula is there? They sit together on the ottoman, Paula taking Elian's hand. Elian Paula, in our house in the Avenue de Friedland, on the floor below us, there was a MRS Brereton. She used to be a friend of my mother's MRS Court Elian and I spent a great deal of our time with her. Paula suspiciously. Oh. Letting Elian's hand fall. Is this lady going to take you up in place of MRS Court Elian? Elian no, no her brother is staying with her was staying with her. Her brother breaking off in confusion. Paula well? Elian almost inaudibly. Paula she rises and walks away, Paula following her. Paula Elian. Taking hold of her. You not in love? Elian looks at Paula appealingly. Paula oh. You in love? You. Oh, this is why you've come home. Of course, you can make friends with me now. You'll leave us for good soon, I suppose, so it doesn't much matter being civil to me for a little while. Elian oh, Paula. Paula why, how you have deceived us all of us. We've taken you for a cold-blooded little saint. The fools you've made of us. Saint Elian. Saint Elian. Elian ah, I might have known you'd only mock me. Paula her tone changing. Elian I can talk to you. Sitting on the settee. You do nothing else but mock and sneer, nothing else. Paula Elian dear. Elian. I didn't mean it. I am so horribly jealous, it's a sort of curse on me. Kneeling beside Elian and embracing her. My tongue runs away with me. I am going to alter, I swear I am. I've made some good resolutions, and, as Goddess above me, I'll keep them. If you are in love, if you do ever marry, that's no reason why we shouldn't be fond of each other. Come, you've kissed me of your own accord, you can take it back. Now we friends again, aren't we? Elian dear. I want to know everything, everything. Elian dear, Elian. Elian Paula, Hugh has done something that makes me very angry. He came with us from Paris today, to see Papa. He is staying with Mrs. Court Elian, and I ought to tell you Paula. Yes, yes. What? Elian, he has found his way by the Warren meadow through the plantation up to this house. He is waiting to bid me good night. Glancing towards the garden. He is out there. Paula, oh. Elian, what shall I do? Paula, bring him in to see me. Will you? Elian, no, no. Paula, but I am dying to know him. Oh, yes, you must. I shall meet him before Aubrey does. Excitedly running her hands over her hair. I am so glad. Elian goes out by the window. The mirror, mirror. What a fright I must look. Not finding the hand glass on the table, she jumps onto the settee, and surveys herself in the mirror over the mantelpiece, then sits quietly down and waits. Elian. Just fancy. Elian. After a pause, Elian enters by the window with Hugh. Elian, Paula, this is Captain Ardale Mrs. Tanqueray. Paula risen and turns, and she and Hugh stand staring blankly at each other for a moment or two, then Paula advances and gives him her hand. Paula in a strange voice, but calmly. How do you do? Hugh, how do you do? Paula to Elian. Mr. Ardale and I have met in London, Elian. Captain Ardale, now? Hugh, yes. Elian, in London? Paula, they say the world's very small, don't they? Hugh, yes. Paula, Elian, dear, I want to have a little talk about you to Mr. Ardale. Captain Ardale alone. Putting her arms round Elian, and leading her to the door. Come back in a little while. Elian nods to Paula with a smile and goes out, while Paula stands watching her at the open door. In a little while, in a little, closing the door and then taking a seat facing Hugh. Be quick. Mr. Tanqueray has only gone down to the Warren with Mrs. Court Elian. What is to be done? Hugh blankly. Done? Paula, done. Something must be done. Hugh, I understood that Mr. Tanqueray had married a Mrs. Mrs. Paula Jarman? Hugh, yes. Paula, I'd been going by that name. You didn't follow my doings after we separated? Hugh, no. Paula sneeringly. No. Hugh, I went out to India. Paula, what's to be done? Hugh, damn this chance. Paula, oh, my God. Hugh, your husband doesn't know, does he? Paula, that you and I? Hugh, yes. Paula, no, he knows about others. Hugh, not about me. How long were we? Paula, I don't remember, exactly. Hugh, do you think it matters? Paula is his daughter. With a muttered exclamation he turns away and sits with his head in his hands. What's to be done? Hugh, I wish I could think. Paula, oh. Oh. What happened to that flat of ours in Ethelbert Street? Hugh, I let it. Paula, all that pretty furniture? Hugh, sold it. Paula, I came across the key of the escritoire the other day in an old purse. Suddenly realizing the horror and hopelessness of her position, and starting to her feet with an hysterical cry of rage. What am I maundering about? Hugh, for God's sake, be quiet. Do let me think. Paula, this will send me mad. Suddenly turning and standing over him. You beast, to crop up in my life again like this. Hugh, I always treated you fairly. Paula weakly. Oh. I beg your pardon, I know you did. She sinks onto the settee, crying hysterically. Hugh, hush. Paula, she kissed me tonight. I'd won her over. I've had such a fight to make her love me. And now just as she's beginning to love me, to bring this on her. Hugh, hush, hush. Don't break down. Paula sobbing. You don't know. I haven't been getting on well in my marriage. It's been my fault. The life I used to lead spoiled me completely. But I'd made up my mind to turn over a new life from tonight. From tonight. Hugh, Paula, don't you call me that. Hugh Mrs. Tanqueray, there is no cause for you to despair in this way. It's all right, I tell you it shall be all right. Paula shivering. What are we to do? Hugh, hold our tongues. Paula staring vacantly. Hugh, the chances are 100 to 1 against anyone ever turning up who knew us when we were together. Besides, no one would be such a brute as to split on us. If anybody did do such a thing, we should have to lie. What are we upsetting ourselves like this for, when we've simply got to hold our tongues? Paula, you as mad as I am. Hugh, can you think of a better plan? Paula, there's only one plan possible. Let us come to our senses. Mr. Tanqueray must be told. Hugh, your husband. What? And I lose Elian. I lose Elian. Paula, you've got to lose her. Hugh, I want to lose her. I can lose her. Paula, didn't I read of your doing any number of brave things in India? Why, you seem to be an awful coward. Hugh, that's another sort of pluck altogether. I haven't this sort of pluck. Paula, oh, I don't ask you to tell Mr. Tanqueray. That's my job. Hugh, standing over her. You'd better. You. Paula, rising. Don't bully me. I intend to. Hugh, taking hold of her, she wrenches herself free. Look here, Paula. I never treated you badly. You've owned it. Why should you want to pay me out like this? You don't know how I love Elian. Paula, yes, that's just what I do know. Hugh, I say you don't. She's as good as my own mother. I've been downright honest with her too. I told her, in Paris, that I'd been a bit wild at one time, and, after a damned wretched day, she promised to forgive me because of what I'd done since in India. She's behaved like an angel to me. Surely I oughtn't to lose her, after all, just because I've been like other fellows. No, I haven't been half as rackety as 100 men we could think of. Paula, don't pay me out for nothing, be fair to me, there's a good girl, be fair to me. Paula, oh, I am not considering you at all. I advise you not to stay here any longer, Mr. Tanqueray is sure to be back soon. Hugh, taking up his hat. What's the understanding between us then? What have we arranged to do? Paula, I don't know what you're going to do, I've got to tell Mr. Tanqueray. Hugh, by God, you shall do nothing of the sort. Approaching her fiercely. Paula, you shocking coward. Hugh, if you dare. Going up to the window. Mind. If you dare. Paula, following him. Why, what would you do? Hugh, after a short pause, sullenly. Nothing. I'd shoot myself, that's nothing. Good night. Paula, good night. He disappears. She walks unsteadily to the ottoman, and sits, and as she does so her hand falls upon the little silver mirror, which she takes up, staring at her own reflection. Act 4, the drawing room at Higher Combe, the same evening. Paula is still seated on the ottoman, looking vacantly before her, with the little mirror in her hand. Lady Oread enters. Lady Oread, there you are. You never came into the billiard room. Isn't it maddening? Kaylee Drummel gives me 60 out of 100 and beats me. I must be out of form, because I know I play remarkably well for a lady. Only last month Paula rises. Whatever is the matter with you, old girl? Paula, why? Lady Oread staring. It's the light, I suppose. Paula replaces the mirror on the table. By Aubrey S. bolting from the billiard table in that fashion, I thought perhaps Paula, yes, it's all right. Lady Oread, you've patched it up? Paula nods. Oh, I am jolly glad. I mean, Paula, yes, I know what you mean. Thanks, Mabel. Lady Oread kissing Paula. Now take my advice, for the future, Paula. Mabel, if I've been disagreeable to you while you've been staying here, I beg your pardon. Walking away and sitting down. Lady Oread, you disagreeable, my dear? I haven't noticed it. Dodo and me both consider you make a first-class hostess, but then you've had such practice, haven't you? Dropping onto the ottoman and gaping. Oh, talk about being sleepy. Paula, why don't you? Lady Oread, why, dear, I must hang about for Dodo. You may as well know it, he's in one of his moods. Paula under her breath. Oh. Lady Oread, now, it's not his fault, it was deadly dull for him while we were playing billiards. Kaylee Drummel did ask him to mark, but I stopped that, it's so easy to make a gentleman look like a billiard marker. This is just how it always is, if poor old Dodo has nothing to do, he loses count, as you may say. Paula, hark! Sir George Oread enters, walking slowly and deliberately, he looks pale and watery-eyed. Sir George with mournful indistinctness. I am afraid we've left you a great deal to yourself tonight, Mrs. Tanqueray. Attritions of billiards. I apologize. I say, where's Sol Aubrey? Paula, my husband has been obliged to go out to a neighbor's house. Sir George, I want his advice on a rather pressing matter connected with my family. Sitting. Tomorrow will do just as well. Lady Oread to Paula. This is the mood I hate so, drivelling about his precious family. Sir George, the fact is, Mrs. Tanqueray, I am not easy in my mind bout the way I am treatin' my poor ol' mother. Lady Oread to Paula. Do you hear that? That's his mother, but my mother he won't so much as look at. Sir George, I shall write to Bruton Street first thing in the morning. Lady Oread to Paula. Mama has stuck to me through everything well, you know. Sir George, I'll get ol' Aubrey to figure out a letter. I'll drop line to Uncle Fitz to deuced shame of the ol' feller to chuck me over in this manner. Wiping his eyes. All my family have chucked me over. Lady Oread rising. Dodo. Sir George, use because I've married beneath me, to be chucked over. Aunt Lydia, the General, Hooky Whitgrave, Lady Signal, my own dear sister. All turn their backs on me. It's more than I can stand. Lady Oread approaching him with dignity. Sir George, wish Mrs. Tanqueray good night at once and come upstairs. Do you hear me? Sir George rising angrily. While Lady Oread, be quiet. Sir George, you presume to order me about. Lady Oread, you remaking an exhibition of yourself. Sir George, look ere. Lady Oread, come along, I tell you. He hesitates, utters a few inarticulate sounds, then snatches up a fragile ornament from the table, and is about to dash it onto the ground. Lady Oread retreats, and Paula goes to him. Paula, George. He replaces the ornament. Sir George shaking Paula's hand. Good night, Mrs. Tanqueray. Lady O read to Paula. Good night, darling. Wish Aubrey good night for me. Now, Dodo. She goes out. Sir George to Paula. I say, are you going to sit up for ol Aubrey? Paula yes. Sir George shall I keep you comp New York? Paula no, thank you, George. Sir George sure? Paula yes, sure. Sir George shaking hands. Good night again. Paula good night. She turns away. He goes out, steadying himself carefully. Druml appears outside the window, smoking. Druml looking into the room, and seeing Paula. My last cigar. Where's Aubrey? Paula gone down to the Warren, to see Mrs. Cordellian home. Druml entering the room. Did you say Mrs. Cordellian? Paula yes. She has brought Elian back. Druml bless my soul. Why? Paula I am too tired to tell you, Kaylee. If you stroll along the lane you'll meet Aubrey. Get the news from him. Druml going up to the window. Yes, yes. Returning to Paula. I don't want to bother you, only the anxious old woman, you know. Are you and Aubrey? Paula good friends again? Druml nodding. Paula giving him her hand. Quite, Kaylee, quite. Druml retaining her hand. That's capital. As I am off so early tomorrow morning, let me say now thank you for your hospitality. He bends over her hand gallantly, then goes out by the window. Paula to herself. Are you and Aubrey? Good friends again? Yes. Quite, Kaylee, quite. There is a brief pause, then Aubrey enters hurriedly, wearing a light overcoat and carrying a cap. Aubrey Paula dear. Have you seen Elian? Paula I found her here when I came down. Aubrey she's told you? Paula yes, Aubrey. Aubrey it's extraordinary, isn't it? Not that somebody should fall in love with Elian or that Elian herself should fall in love. All that's natural enough and was bound to happen, I suppose, sooner or later. But this young fellow. You know his history? Paula his history? Aubrey you remember the papers were full of his name a few months ago? Paula oh, yes. Aubrey the man's as brave as a lion, there's no doubt about that, and, at the same time, he's like a big good-natured schoolboy, Mrs. Cordellian says. Have you ever pictured the kind of man Elian would marry someday? Paula I can say that I have. Aubrey a grave, sedate fellow I've thought about She has fallen in love with the way in which Ardale practically laid down his life to save those poor people shut up in the residency. Taking off his coat. Well, I suppose if a man can do that sort of thing, one ought to be content. And yet throwing his coat on the settee. I should have met him tonight, but he'd gone out. Paula dear, tell me how you look upon this business. Paula yes, I will I must. To begin with, I've seen Mr. Ardale. Aubrey Captain Ardale? Paula Captain Ardale. Aubrey seen him? Paula while you were away he came up here, through our grounds, to try to get a word with Elian. I made her fetch him in and present him to me. Aubrey frowning. Doesn't Captain Ardale know there's a lodge and a front door to this place? Never mind. What is your impression of him? Paula Aubrey, do you recollect my bringing you a letter giving you an account of myself to the Albany late one night the night before we got married? Aubrey a letter? Paula you burnt it, don't you know? Aubrey yes, I know. Paula his name was in that letter. Aubrey going back from her slowly, and staring at her. I don't understand. Paula, well, Ardale and I once kept house together. He remained silent, not moving. Why don't you strike me? Hit me in the face, I'd rather you did. Hurt me. Hurt me. Aubrey, after a pause. What did you and this man say to each other just now? Paula, I hardly know. Aubrey, think. Paula, the end of it all was that I told him I must inform you of what had happened. He didn't want me to do that. I declared that I would. He dared me to. Breaking down. Let me alone. Oh. Aubrey, where was my daughter while this went on? Paula, I had sent her out of the room. That is all right. Aubrey, yes. Yes, yes, yes. He turns his head towards the door. Paula, who's that? A servant enters with a letter. Servant, the coachman has just run up with this from the Warren, sir. Aubrey takes the letter. It's for Mrs. Tanqueray, sir. There's no answer. The servant withdraws. Aubrey goes to Paula and drops the letter into her lap. She opens it with uncertain hands. Paula reading it to herself. It's from him. He's going away or gone, I think. Rising in a weak way. What does it say? I never could make out his writing. She gives the letter to Aubrey and stands near him, looking at the letter over his shoulder as he reads. Aubrey reading. I shall be in Paris by tomorrow evening. Shall wait there, at Maurice's, for a week, ready to receive any communication you or your husband may address to me. Please invent some explanation to Elian. Mrs. Tanqueray, for God's sake, do what you can for me. Paula and Aubrey speak in low voices, both still looking at the letter. Paula, has he left the Warren, I wonder, already? Aubrey, that doesn't matter. Paula, no, but I can picture him going quietly off. Very likely he's walking on to Bridgeford or Cottering tonight, to get the first train in the morning. A pleasant stroll for him. Aubrey, we'll reckon he's gone, that's enough. Paula, that isn't to be answered in any way? Aubrey, silence will answer that. Paula, he'll soon recover his spirits, I know. Aubrey, you know. Offering her the letter. You don't want this, I suppose? Paula, no. Aubrey, it's done with. He tears the letter into small pieces. She has dropped the envelope. She searches for it, finds it, and gives it to him. Paula, here. Aubrey, looking at the remnants of the letter. This is no good, I must burn it. Paula, burn it in your room. Aubrey, yes. Paula, put it in your pocket for now. Aubrey, yes. He does so. Elian enters and they both turn, guiltily, and stare at her. Elian, after a short silence, wonderingly. Papa. Aubrey, what do you want, Elian? Elian, I heard from Willis that you had come in, I only want to wish you good night. Paula steals away, without looking back. What's the matter? Ah. Of course, Paula has told you about Captain Ardale? Aubrey, well? Elian, have you and he met? Aubrey, no. Elian, you are angry with him, so was I, but tomorrow when he calls and expresses his regret tomorrow. Aubrey, Elian. Elian, yes, Papa. Aubrey, I can't let you see this man again. He walks away from her in a paroxysm of distress, then, after a moment or two, he returns to her and takes her to his arms. Elian. My child. Elian, releasing herself. What has happened, Papa? What is it? Aubrey, thinking out his words deliberately. Something has occurred, something has come to my knowledge, in relation to Captain Ardale, which puts any further acquaintanceship between you two out of the question. Elian, any further acquaintanceship out of the question? Aubrey, yes. Advancing to her quickly, but she shrinks from him. Elian, no, no, I am quite well. After a short pause. It's not an hour ago since Mrs. Court Elian left you and me together here. You had nothing to urge against Captain Ardale then. Aubrey, no. Elian, you don't know each other, you haven't even seen him this evening. Father. Aubrey, I have told you he and I have not met. Elian, Mrs. Court Elian couldn't he have spoken against him to you just now? No, 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 she's too good a friend to both of us. Aren't you going to give me some explanation? You can't take this position towards me, towards Captain Ardale, without affording me the fullest explanation. Aubrey Elian, there are circumstances connected with Captain Ardale's career which you had better remain ignorant of. It must be sufficient for you that I consider these circumstances render him unfit to be your husband. Elian, father. Aubrey, you must trust me, Elian. You must try to understand the depth of my love for you and the agony it gives me to hurt you. You must trust me. Elian, I will, father, but you must trust me a little too. Circumstances connected with Captain Ardale's career? Aubrey, yes. Elian, when he presents himself here tomorrow, of course you will see him and let him defend himself? Aubrey, Captain Ardale will not be here tomorrow. Elian, not. You have stopped his coming here? Aubrey, indirectly, yes. Elian, but just now he was talking to me at that window. Nothing had taken place then. And since then nothing can have. Oh. Why, you have heard something against him from Paula. Aubrey, from Paula. Elian, she knows him. Aubrey, she has told you so? Elian, when I introduced Captain Ardale to her she said she had met him in London. Of course. It is Paula who has done this. Aubrey, in a hard voice. I hope you'll refrain from rushing at conclusions. There's nothing to be gained by trying to avoid the main point, which is that you must drive Captain Ardale out of your thoughts. Understand that. You're able to obtain comfort from your religion, aren't you? I am glad to think that's so. I talk to you in a harsh way, Elian, but I feel your pain almost as acutely as you do. Going to the door. I can't say anything more to you tonight. Elian, father. He pauses at the door. Father, I am obliged to ask you this, there's no help for it, I've no mother to go to. Does what you have heard about Captain Ardale concern the time when he led a wild, a dissolute life in London? Aubrey, returning to her slowly and staring at her. Explain yourself. Elian, he has been quite honest with me. One day in Paris he confessed to me what a man's life is, what his life had been. Aubrey, under his breath. Oh. Elian, he offered to go away, not to approach me again. Aubrey, and you accepted his view of what a man's life is. Elian, as far as I could forgive him, I forgave him. Aubrey, with a groan. Why, when was it you left us? It hasn't taken you long to get your robe just a little dusty at the hem. Elian, what do you mean? Aubrey, ha. A few weeks ago my one great desire was to keep you ignorant of evil. Elian, father, it is impossible to be ignorant of evil. Instinct, common instinct, teaches us what is good and bad. Surely I am none the worse for knowing what is wicked and detesting it. Aubrey, detesting it. Why, you love this fellow. Elian, you don't understand. I have simply judged Captain Ardale as we all pray to be judged. I have lived in imagination through that one week in India when he deliberately offered his life back to God to save those wretched, desperate people. In his whole career I see now nothing but that one week. Those few hours bring him nearer the saints, I believe, than 50 uneventful years of mere blamelessness would have done. And so, father, if Paula has reported anything to Captain Ardale's discredit, Aubrey, Paula. Elian, it must be Paula, it can't be anybody else. Aubrey, please keep Paula out of the question. Finally, Elian, understand me, I have made up my mind. Again going to the door. Elian, but wait, listen. I have made up my mind also. Aubrey, I recognize your mother in you now. Elian, you need not speak against my mother because you are angry with me. Aubrey, I hardly know what I am saying to you. In the morning he goes out. She remains standing, and turns her head to listen. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she goes softly to the window, and looks out under the veranda. Elian, in a whisper. Paula. Paula. Paula appears outside the window and steps into the room. Her face is white and drawn, her hair is a little disordered. Paula huskily. Well? Elian, have you been under the veranda all the while listening? Paula, and no. Elian, you have overheard us, I see you have. And it is you who have been speaking to my father against Captain Ardale. Isn't it? Paula, why don't you own it or deny it? Paula, oh, I don't mind owning it, why should I? Elian, you seem to have been very eager to tell your tale. Paula, no, I wasn't eager, Elian. I'd have given something not to have had to do it. I wasn't eager. Elian, not. Oh, I think you might safely have spared us all for a little while. Paula, but, Elian, you forget I am your stepmother. It was my duty to tell your father what I knew. Elian, what you knew. Why, after all, what can you know? You can only speak from gossip, report, hearsay. How is it possible that you... She stops abruptly. The two women stand staring at each other for a moment, then Elian backs away from Paula slowly. Paula. Paula, what's the matter? Elian, you knew Captain Ardale in London. Paula, why, what do you mean? Elian, oh. She makes for the door, but Paula catches her by the wrist. Paula, you shall tell me what you mean. Elian, suddenly looking fixedly in Paula's face. You know what I mean. Paula, you accuse me. Elian, it's in your face. Paula hoarsely. You think I am that sort of creature, do you? Elian, let me go. Paula, answer me. You've always hated me. Shaking her. Out with it. Elian, you hurt me. Paula, you've always hated me. You shall answer me. Elian, well, then, I have always. Paula, what? Elian, I have always known what you were. Paula, Who told you? Elian, nobody but yourself. From the first moment I saw you I knew you were altogether unlike the good women I'd left. Directly I saw you I knew what my father had done. You've wondered why I've turned from you. That's the reason. Oh, but this is a horrible way for the truth to come home to everyone. Oh. Paula, it's a lie. It's all a lie. Forcing Elian down upon her knees. You shall beg my pardon for it. Elian utters a loud shriek of terror. Elian, I am a good woman. I swear I am. I've always been a good woman. You dare to say I've ever been anything else? It's a lie. Throwing her off violently. Aubrey re-enters. Aubrey, Paula. Paula staggers back as Aubrey advances. Raising Elian. What's this? What's this? Elian faintly. Nothing. It's my fault. Father, I don't wish to see Captain Ardale again. She goes out, Aubrey slowly following her to the door. Paula, Aubrey, she guesses. Aubrey guesses? Paula, about me and Ardale. Aubrey, about you and Ardale? Paula, she says she suspected my character from the beginning, that she's always kept me at a distance, and now she sees through. She falters. He helps her to the ottoman, where she sits. Aubrey bending over her. Paula, you must have said something, admitted something. Paula, I don't think so. It's in my face. Aubrey, what? Paula, she tells me so. She's right. I am tainted through and through, anybody can see it, anybody can find it out. You said much the same to me tonight. Aubrey, if she has got this idea into her head, we must drive it out, that's all. We must take steps to what shall we do? We had better what? Sitting and staring before him. Paula Elian. So meek, so demure. Uve often said she reminded you of her mother. Yes, I know now what your first marriage was like. Aubrey, we must drive this idea out of her head. We'll do something. What shall we do? Paula, she's a regular woman too. She could forgive him easily enough, but me. That's just a woman. Aubrey, what can we do? Paula, why, nothing. She'd have no difficulty in following up her suspicions. Suspicions? You should have seen how she looked at me. He buries his head in his hands. There is silence for a time, then she rises slowly, and goes and sits beside him. Aubrey. Aubrey, yes. Paula, I am very sorry. Without meeting her eyes, he lays his hand on her arm for a moment. Aubrey, well, we must look things straight in the face. Glancing round. At any rate, we've done with this. Paula, I suppose so. After a brief pause. Of course, she and I can't live under the same roof anymore. You know she kissed me tonight, of her own accord. Aubrey, I asked her to alter towards you. Paula, that was it, then. Aubrey, I am sorry I sent her away. Paula, it was my fault, I made it necessary. Aubrey, perhaps now she'll propose to return to the convent. Well, she must. Paula, would you like to keep her with you and leave me? Aubrey, Paula. Paula, you needn't be afraid I'd go back to what I was. I couldn't. Aubrey, ssh, for God's sake. You and we'll get out of this place. What a fool I was to come here again. Paula, you lived here with your first wife. Aubrey, we'll get out of this place and go abroad again, and begin afresh. Paula, begin afresh? Aubrey, there's no reason why the future shouldn't be happy for us, no reason that I can see. Paula, Aubrey. Aubrey, yes? Paula, you'll never forget this, you know. Aubrey, this? Paula, tonight, and everything that's led up to it. Our coming here, Elian, our quarrels, cat and dog. Mrs. Court, Elian, the Oreads, this man. What an everlasting nightmare for you. Aubrey, oh, we can forget it, if we choose. Paula, that was always your cry. How can one do it? Aubrey, well, make our calculations solely for the future, talk about the future, think about the future. Paula, I believe the future is only the past again, entered through another gate. Aubrey, that's an awful belief. Paula, tonight proves it. You must see now that, do what we will, go where we will, you'll be continually reminded of what I was. I see it. Aubrey, you frightened tonight, meeting this man has frightened you. But that sort of thing isn't likely to recur. The world isn't quite so small as all that. Paula, isn't it? The only great distances it contains are those we carry within ourselves, the distances that separate husbands and wives, for instance. And so it'll be with us. You'll do your best, oh, I know that you're a good fellow. But circumstances will be too strong for you in the end, mark my words. Aubrey, Paula. Paula, of course I am pretty now, I am pretty still, and a pretty woman, whatever else she may be, is always well, endurable. But even now I notice that the lines of my face are getting deeper, so are the hollows about my eyes. Yes, my face is covered with little shadows that usen't to be there. Oh, I know I am going off. I hate paint and dye and those messes, but, by and by, I shall drift the way of the others, I shan't be able to help myself. And then, some day, perhaps very suddenly, under a queer, fantastic light at night or in the glare of the morning, that horrid, irresistible truth that physical repulsion forces on men and women will come to you, and you'll sicken at me. Aubrey I. Paula, you'll see me then, at last, with other people's eyes, you'll see me just as your daughter does now, as all wholesome folks see women like me. And I shall have no weapon to fight with, not one serviceable little bit of prettiness left me to defend myself with. A worn-out creature, broken up, very likely, some time before I ought to be, my hair bright, my eyes dull, my body too thin or too stout, my cheeks rattled and ruddled, a ghost, a wreck, a caricature, a candle that gutters, call such an end what you like. Oh, Aubrey, what shall I be able to say to you then? And this is the future you talk about. I know it, I know it. He is still sitting staring forward, she rocks herself to and fro as if in pain. Oh, Aubrey. Oh. Oh. Aubrey. Paula. Trying to comfort her. Paula, oh, and I wanted so much to sleep tonight. Laying her head upon his shoulder. From the distance, in the garden, there comes the sound of Drummel's voice. He is singing as he approaches the house. That's Cayley, coming back from the Warren. Starting up. He doesn't know, evidently. I want to see him. She goes out quickly. Drummel's voice comes nearer. Aubrey rouses himself and snatches up a book from the table, making a pretense of reading. After a moment or two, Drummel appears at the window and looks in. Drummel, aha! My dear chap! Aubrey. Cayley? Drummel coming into the room. I went down to the Warren after you? Aubrey. Yes? Drummel, missed you. Well? I've been gossiping with Mrs. Cordellian. Confound you, I've heard the news. Aubrey. What have you heard? Drummel. What have I heard? Why, Elian and young Ardale. Looking at Aubrey keenly. My dear Aubrey. Alice is under the impression that you are inclined to look on the affair favourably. Aubrey rising and advancing to Drummel. You've not met Captain Ardale? Drummel. No, why do you ask? By the by, I don't know that I need tell you, but it's rather strange. He's not at the Warren tonight? Aubrey. No. Drummel. He left the house half an hour ago, to stroll about the lanes. Just now a note came from him, a scribble in pencil, simply telling Alice that she would receive a letter from him tomorrow. What's the matter? There's nothing very wrong, is there? My dear chap, pray forgive me if I am asking too much. Aubrey. Cayley, you urged me to send her away. Drummel. Elian. Yes, yes. But by all accounts this is quite an eligible young fellow. Alice has been giving me the history. Aubrey. Curse him. Hurling his book to the floor. Curse him. Yes, I do curse him and his class. Perhaps I curse myself too in doing it. He has only led a man's life just as I, how many of us, have done. The misery he has brought on me and mine, it's likely enough we, in our time, have helped to bring on others by this leading a man's life. But I do curse him for all that. My God, I've nothing more to fear. I've paid my fine. And so I can curse him in safety. Curse him. Curse him. Drummel, in heaven's name, tell me what's happened? Aubrey gripping Drummel's arm. Paula. Paula. Drummel what? Aubrey they met tonight here. They re not strangers to each other. Drummel Aubrey. Aubrey curse him. My poor, wretched wife. My poor, wretched wife. The door opens and Elian appears. The two men turn to her. There is a moment's silence. Elian father. Aubrey Elian. Elian I want you. He goes to her. Father go to Paula. He looks into her face, startled. Quickly. He passes her to go out, she seizes his arm, with a cry. No, don't go. He shakes her off and goes. Elian staggers back towards Drummel. Drummel to Elian. What do you mean? What do you mean? Elian I went to her room to tell her I was sorry for something I had said to her. And I was sorry. I heard the fall. I've seen her. It's horrible. Drummel she has. Elian killed herself? Yes. So everybody will say. But I know I helped to kill her. If I had only been merciful. She faints upon the ottoman. He pauses for a moment irresolutely, then he goes to the door, opens it, and stands looking out. Colophon the Second Mrs. Tanqueray was published in 1893 by Arthur W. Pinero. This ebook was produced for Standard eBooks by B. Timothy Keith, and is based on a transcription produced in 2012 by K. Nordquist, Joanne Greenwood, and the online distributed proofreading team for Project Gutenberg, and on digital scans from the Hathitrust Digital Library. The cover page is adapted from Madame Lerolle, a painting completed in 1882 by Henri Fantin Latour. The cover and title pages feature the Ligue Spartan and Sorts Mill Gaudi typefaces created in 2014 and 2009 by the League of Movable Type. This edition was released on June 16, 2022, 9:31 p.m. and is based on revision 8B0551A. The first edition of this ebook was released on March 14, 2019, 3:41 p.m. You can check for updates to this ebook, view its revision history, or download it for different e-reading systems at standardebooks.org. Ebooks Arthur W. Pinero II Mrs. Tanqueray. The volunteer-driven Standard eBooks project relies on readers like you to submit typos, corrections, and other improvements. Anyone can contribute at standardebooks.org. Uncopyright. May you do good and not evil. May you find forgiveness for yourself and forgive others. May you share freely, never taking more than you give. Copyright pages exist to tell you can do something. Unlike them, this uncopyright page exists to tell you that the writing and artwork in this ebook are believed to be in the United States public domain, that is, they are believed to be free of copyright restrictions in the United States. The United States public domain represents our collective cultural heritage, and items in it are free for anyone in the United States to do almost anything at all with, without having to get permission. Copyright laws are different all over the world, and the source text or artwork in this ebook may still be copyrighted in other countries. If you are not located in the United States, you must check your local laws before using this ebook. Standard eBooks makes no representations regarding the copyright status of the source text or artwork in this ebook in any country other than the United States. Non-authorship activities performed on items that are in the public domain, so-called sweat of the brow work, don't create a new copyright. That means that nobody can claim a new copyright on an item that is in the public domain for, among other things, work like digitization, markup, or typography. Regardless, the contributors to this ebook release their contributions under the terms in the CC 01.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication, thus dedicating to the worldwide public domain all of the work they've done on this ebook, including but not limited to metadata, the title page, imprint, colophon, this uncopyright, and any changes or enhancements to, or markup on, the original text and artwork. This dedication doesn't change the copyright status of the source text or artwork. We make this dedication in the interest of enriching our global cultural heritage, to promote free and libre culture around the world, and to give back to the unrestricted culture that has given all of us so much.